Do we have anything else to watch? How many railguns? Do you think I can make it with 11 railguns? How many boosters? How long does it take to get to the edge of the universe? I'm gonna do 7. I'm gonna do 5 boosters and these railguns and then the fusion reactors and just go. Do these guns even take energy? Oh, they do. Ooh, 8 megawatts. Okay. Okay. Finish the bad empanada video gets unhinged.
By accident. That's the problem. He thinks he's funny, like not by accident, and I can't let that stand.
Yeah, no, he's repulsive. He's disgusting.
I don't know. You've been over his story on your stream, haven't you?
Wait, who?
And I can't let
what are we talking about?
Accident. That's the. Drew Pavlou is hilarious. By accident. That's the problem. He thinks he's funny, like not by accident, and I can't let that stand.
Yeah, no, he's repulsive. He's disgusting.
The Drew guy.
You've been over his story on your stream, haven't you? Is it worth going over it again?
What, his dad yelling at him?
Like the Drew Pavlou origin story? No, not that. The Drew Pavlou origin story. Like he was like a pathetic. Like he actually contacted me 4 or 5 years ago. Like, hey man, I really like your videos. Blah blah blah. He was trying to frame himself as like a left critic of China during the Hong Kong protest era, and I was actually like I was.
Wait, what?
That.
The prostate out.
So fucking epic. I need to play this song over Gaza videos. Just kidding.
It's actually like I wasn't like against the protest. I was like sort of, let them protest. Why not? There's no need to do this. The Chinese system is strong enough to withstand protests. You shouldn't react in this way. Was my sort of criticism of it. And Drew Pavlou saw me as like an ally because of that, which disgusts me. And he started DMing me. And then like within a couple of years of that, the anti-China grift, when that's your whole personality, inevitably leads to just the far right, basically. Because where else is that going to go when that's the only facet of your personality? Like the big Western enemy, I'm against that.
Firebomb the Chinese embassy or something?
Well, allegedly, he was in the UK. I don't know why. He was in the UK for some reason. And a bomb threat was called in the Chinese embassy from his email. And he got arrested for that. And then I don't know what happened after that. But, from his email.
How do you get out of that? Damn, the Atlantic Council has incredible connections.
So Drew Pavlou is someone who has, to be clear, Drew Pavlou is the one who originated the claim that I was arrested for like child rape, okay? So what I'm going to tell you here is with the amount of charitability that someone like that deserves. Drew Pavlou was arrested because he's the one who called in the bomb threat, and he was planning to bomb the Chinese embassy. But the Met Police heroically thwarted his plan. So Drew Pavlou is a terrorist. Thank you, Met Police. They didn't even need guns to do it. They were unarmed there.
Yeah. He would have, they're horrible. They have a horrible track record of stopping pedophilia and sexual assault. But apparently, this one guy was so incompetent in his.
I can't listen to this guy talk. He's fucking retarded. Give me something else to watch while I eat. Jesus. Wait, what?
That my soldiers brought in and were like, this boy right here, he's gonna be a good warrior.
Drew Pavlou's son is gonna be the Janissary, not mine.
No, he's a terrible Janissary. Well, I think he would make for a horrible Janissary. I would never allow him to be.
We would need to get to him very early before Drew destroys his mind.
A Janissary is a Christian boy kidnapped by the Ottoman Empire, forcibly converted to Islam/circumcised, and turned into a slave boy or slave soldier for the Ottoman Army. I knew that, by the way. Everyone in chat should know that. This stuff I learned in year 1. It's just this should be default knowledge. Come on, guys.
I'm not going to tell people.
Oh, I talked about this on stream yesterday, right? Oh, yeah, I must have, because I'm literally reacting to it in the video. Oh my fucking god, dude. This is so true. Actually, link me this full interview.
We begin this Sunday morning with increasing calls to investigate and possibly arrest Jim Comey after the former FBI director posted an image on social media suggesting a call to assassinate President Trump. Comey was interviewed by the Secret Service on Friday and is now facing a string of federal probes after he posted an image of a beach scene with seashells arranged in the numbers 8647, writing,
"You need this stupid fucking..." Hold on, wait a second. Do you have to have the fluid or can you just use the fuel? I don't need this dumb fucking fluid, do I?
this cool shelf formation on my beach walk. The number 86 typically refers to elimination.
But you never use
Trump
it?
is, of course, the 47th president.
Whatever.
After much public outcry on social media, Comey took down the post, claiming he was not aware that 86 refers to eliminating something and that he opposes violence. There have already been 2 assassination attempts on President Trump's life, which are still under investigation by the FBI. After the incident, new FBI Director Kash Patel told me he is in the middle of an active investigation into this matter. Days earlier, the 2 walked us through Comey's weaponization of the FBI, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, as well as some of the other important cases that they are working on, including drug and human trafficking cells operating in America today, the events of January 6th, and Jeffrey Epstein's death. But the director began by praising his 30,000-plus colleagues at the FBI during this National Police Week.
It's Police Week, Maria, and so it's a really momentous occasion for law enforcement, for the sacrifice they put in for the country. The deputy and I have been going to events all week, and the most painful part is being with the families of the fallen. But we're here to remind America that there's a consequence to the freedom that they have, and there's good men and women that keep stepping up for that fight. So, it's a big deal that you're here on Police Week.
Thank you. And I saw the honor wall, and I want to walk past that with you. I unfortunately was on Wall Street on 9/11, and my heart goes out to the families who've lost their loved ones. Dan?
Yeah, 9/11. I was an agent on 9/11 with the Secret Service, and I just remember, as you probably do, even from the media perspective, the chaos. Remember, nothing worked like we thought it was going to work. So the director and I, we've both been deeply inspired, obviously, as everyone in America was, by tragic, horrible incident. But I know when Kash and I are sitting there in the morning, that is the single motivating factor for us, is keep the homeland safe. That is priority number 1.
And I want to ask you about that. Now, I'll go into some of the specifics. But, Director, you've said many times that the FBI has been politicized. Mm-hmm. So what are your plans to rebuild trust in this fine institution and depoliticize the FBI?
So we have a multi-part process. First of all, our priorities. Simple. Crush violent crime. Defend the homeland. Rigorous organizational accountability. And the 4th, which leads directly to your question, aggressive constitutional oversight with Congress. The way we rebuild trust is we already have the men and women here in the rank and file that signed up to be cops, that signed up to be intel analysts, that signed up to be special support staff, that want to do the work. That's why we're sending them into the field. We can talk about that later.
One thing that's interesting is seeing the people that have come in and they kind of like talk a bunch of shit to get on Trump's good side, and then seeing like how many people are actually here to do a reasonable job. Like I feel like the like Besant, like I can tell that he's trying, Lutnick is a dick suck who's a piece of shit traitor. I feel like, from what I've heard of Cash, it doesn't seem like he's doing any crazy unhinged shit right now. I don't know, maybe I've missed something. Him not having the budget in that one hearing was pretty funny. But wasn't Cash one of the guys who, when Elon sent that retarded email out, was Cash one of the guys who emailed everybody in like the FBI and he was like, don't respond to this is a waste of fucking time? Okay, yeah. He has a revenge list. Yeah, Cash was one of the most unhinged people coming into this. Like the books and everything else is like fucking wacky and crazy. He might still be a horrible, terrible leader. I haven't heard anything crazy from the FBI under him yet. So I don't know. We'll see.
What we need America to know is that this place was politicized. And Congress has rightfully requested the documents from Crossfire Hurricane to January 6th to the Richmond Catholic Memo and so much more. But now finally Americans are reading for themselves the documentation where a very select few leaders in the former FBI decided to politicize it. We don't need me and the deputy telling you it's politicized. We want the American people to read it, and now they are.
And I know I lived with it for you. I watched it with you and Devin Nunes when you were truth tellers on all of this, and you were as well, Dan, throughout the Russia collusion story and the rest.
Look, I can speak to the folks that were in our seats, our predecessors, and they intentionally failed the American public by putting on the biggest DC deception game we've ever seen. They said the FBI was the most storied institution for law enforcement, and it was. And it will be again very soon. But when the likes of Comey and McCabe and Strzok and company came in here with the James Bakers of the world and intentionally lied to a federal court only to rig a presidential election by lying to the American public and using taxpayer dollars, likely illegally, to fund this entire operation, and then withhold exculpatory information from a federal court that I used to appear before to manhunt terrorists, that's what broke the FBI. And then when they were caught, they lied about it. And you and a few others like Dan and others were brave enough to cover it 6, 7, 8 years ago. And we're still talking about it today because as Congress is working rigorously with us, the Crossfire Hurricane documents are coming fast and hard. And they're being sent there unredacted so we can have full accountability. And that's how you restore what the trust that was lost to the American public when it comes to the FBI.
Yeah, but come on, Director, with all due respect, we've been talking about this for a long time, and I've been demanding accountability for many, many years. One of you mentioned Comey, Strzok, and the rest. They've got TV shows. They've got media platforms. They're fine. There's been no accountability.
Well, look, it's a fair criticism, but what I will tell people is we weren't here in the FBI in the last 5 years when we had statute of limitations that were still in play, where we could have investigated criminal conduct. Most of these statute of limitations are 5 years old. And we will investigate criminal conduct where we find a righteous case to do so, and the law and the facts allow us to. But a lot of it we're precluded from. So we'll take the criticism, and it's rightfully so. That could we have done more in the past? Sure, people before us could have. But what we can do now is continue to put out the documents and the information that these people withheld from the American public. And I'm just telling you right now, as much as we know about Crossfire Hurricane, he and I just found out more last week.
What did you find out?
And we're continuing to work with Congress to put those documents out. That's how vindictive and vicious the former leadership structure here was.
Wow.
Not only did they bastardize the FISA process and lie to the American public, they withheld and hid documentation and put it in rooms where people weren't supposed to look. And it's a good thing we're here now to clean it up, and you're about to see a wave
They
of
keep saying this, but I don't
What
think
do you
anybody's
mean?
presented evidence of this happening.
Just give us about a week or two.
Okay. Well, I can
But-
tell you right now that the judge that gave a smack on the wrist on the one agent that lied and, misled the American people, that's the same judge who's back and stopping Donald Trump from doing things, isn't it? Judge Boasberg?
Ooh.
Yeah, I just got
More
to
like Judge Bozoberg.
push back. Listen, we've been here 2 months. He's been here a couple more weeks than that. I mean, we've been here 2 months. You're dealing with a 38,000 member organization and an approximately $12 billion budget.
Fair point.
Where to expect us in 2 months to dig up what was a 8-year, maybe longer, multi-year politicized investigation with multiple layers of processes, from Woods procedures being just thrown in the garbage can and flushed down the toilet bowl, to multiple layers of accountability where people lied and obfuscated. I'm not asking you to trust me. You want this done right or you want it done quickly? Because you can't have it both ways. You want it done quickly, we'll do it. And you know what'll happen? Just what happened last time. Those same Spygate collusion perpetrators sued the government, got money, got all this shit. You want that? We'll do it. We'll do it quickly and do it wrong.
But are you saying you found things that even you didn't know about? I mean, you were at the core of this.
Yes.
Yes.
I was the lead Russiagate investigator for the House Intelligence Committee. And I've been on both your shows in a prior life talking about it. And I'm telling you and the American public that we have now found material and information and people who wanted to hide it from the world since we got in these seats.
What'd you find?
And we, as the deputy said, we are trying to do it in a fashion where not only are we informing the American public of what happened, but we can have accountability for it. And that takes a little bit more time. And when you layer on the fact that we are rolling out our priorities on violent crime and defending the homeland, you know, we're running a three-part animal here, and we're going 100 miles an hour on each single one.
So important.
Wait, I want to add to that, too, because what the director's saying is right. You got to remember, we come in the morning, there's a portfolio of 100 level 10 items. If it's a level 9, which is a pretty big freaking deal,
that's a big
someone
deal,
else
guys.
fixed it. The only thing that gets to my desk or his is a level 10. That's the entire day. Look at his schedule any given day. I'll show you the palm card I have. It is filled from 7:30 to he leaves 7 at night, 6:30 at night. It's filled all day. We just can't focus on one thing. You want New York to go boom? DC to go boom? You want an OC organization to go hack into some cyber network and crack all of Fox News' holdings? We're dealing with all that stuff too. Everything's a priority. Everything's a priority. This is one of many things we're doing. It's not an excuse. It's just reality.
Now, the Democrats are turning on you, right? I mean, I saw your hearing the other day, and critics have accused you of using the FBI to target political enemies. So set the record straight. You wrote an entire book about it, Government Gangsters. Tell us, how do you respond to the attacks?
Very simply.
What?
The FBI's prior leadership left us an institution, that is a police force for America and the world, that allowed a fentanyl overdose to occur and kill an American citizen every 7 minutes.
Damn.
That prior FBI's leadership, Comey, McCabe, left us an FBI that allowed for a woman or child to be raped every 6.5 minutes in this country.
Damn.
That same leadership structure left us an FBI that permitted a man or woman to be killed twice an hour in this country.
Damn.
That's our response to them. When I go to Congress and I go to the Hill, I say, hey, I'm not policing your neighborhood because it's a Republican or Democratic. I'm asking you for help on what your priorities are and what your resources needs are and where you need training, and we're going to send them to you. That's why we're putting 1,500 FBI employees into the field and outside of Washington, D.C. Now, if the Democrats want to play politics with that, they're the elected officials. They get to say what they want. But yelling at me and Bongino, we could take it all day long.
I don't even understand why. Why did they do that? I mean, why put the FBI and its reputation at risk? What, it was just to win an election? Why?
Because they're weak. Because they're weak.
They're weak.
I hate weak people. I can't stand it. They didn't have. We're on TV, so I already said BS once.
I can just feel this.
They didn't
Thank
have
God.
the guts, the courage, or the character to do the right thing. They did the easy thing. Donald Trump became a convenient political football. They thought they could leverage. They thought they thought with the media on their side that they'd get away with it.
I know that there are cells, drug trafficking cells and human trafficking cells. How significant is this in America?
It's everywhere. I mean, when you open up the border, look, that's not a political statement. The border was open for 4 years. So what happens is crime metastasizes. What happens is you have hundreds of thousands of illegals come across, and a bunch of them are really bad criminals. Not all of them, but a bunch of them. And then they nest into societies. And this is why we're rolling out Mexican street gang task forces across the country, because it's not the international gangs that are just the problem. It's these inner city gangs that exist in 1 or 2 towns here and there and have metastasized and taken over the drug trade, the sex trafficking trade, the child forced labor trade, and the gang trade. They are all in, and no one has been focusing on them because our cities and our elected leadership has allowed them to live without being policed. But that's over now that Dan and I are in the seat.
This is so scary. What do you want to say to families out there, mothers who are afraid for their young girls that they may get taken?
Like the movie.
I want to put everyone at ease watching this today. There is, I hate cliches, but there really is a new sheriff in town. His name's Donald J. Trump. This administration, in conjunction with General Bondi and our director, Kash Patel, I am in the briefing, Maria, with the five of us, Emil, the PDAG, Todd, the DAG, AG, Kash, and me, every morning over at DOJ. The attitude every morning from the president on down, he, the President of the United States, wants this FBI to be able to, in 1 month, 6 months, a year, or 2 years, wants to be able to get out in front of the American people and say, your lives are noticeably different. He doesn't want fairy tales, Aesop's fables. He doesn't want any of that stuff. He wants people to be able to touch it and feel it. I don't care if you're in Stewart, Florida, or Harlem, New York. He wants you to walk outside and say, wow, my neighborhood does look different.
Where are the biggest cells in the country? And how does it work? Are there spotters? Like, how does it work?
It's based on a variety of factors. So when it comes to trafficking, you got to look at the interstate system and look at the intersections of the interstate system running through the Midwest and across the country. Then you just got to look for hard evidence. I didn't know this till my
You just got to look, guys.
Confirmation process, but Memphis, Tennessee is the homicide capital of America per capita. Didn't know that. We have a problem there. We're now addressing it. We're rolling out one of our task forces in the state of Tennessee. But we also know that Ohio possesses the roadway system where the trafficking is through the roof just because of the interstate. So you have to get out there in the field, not just let the FBI agents and intel folks get out there and do the work, but partner with state and local law enforcement, which is a priority, and tribal law enforcement. That's a big, big deal for us. We are not forgetting about Indian country. They suffer from the same violent crime that we do in the rest of America, and we're going to help them. And that's how you learn the ground-based level facts that you need to deploy our assets. We're not coming up with anything fancy.
What a non-answer.
We're just attacking the problem, but we're smart enough to go after the information and say, that's where the problem is because you told us it's there. Now we know we're going.
Wow.
That's interesting. What about the big cities? I mean, we've heard about Tren de Aragua being in New York City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're about to ruin your summer if you're a bad guy. So I'm just warning you now, like, don't buy movie tickets because you're probably not going to cash them in.
LOL.
So the director and I put something together in conjunction with our DOJ partners, General Bondi and Dag Blanche, actually this morning. And if you're a violent criminal, this FBI under our leadership, we don't care who gets the credit. All we care about is making your streets safer, actually safer.
Wow.
Coming up, the assassination attempts on President Trump's life. Why don't we know more today, more than a year later?
What's going on with that?
As we continue, our exclusive from the FBI.
Tell us.
Welcome back. President Trump is proposing spending cuts across most federal agencies, including the FBI. As we continue our exclusive interview, FBI Director Kash Patel told me the FBI's real estate portfolio is about to shrink dramatically, but the mission will not change.
I want to get to a few specifics, and I know you can't talk about any active investigation, so and our viewers understand that. But how come we don't have more information on the assassination attempts on President Trump?
Yeah, the fuck.
There's 2 reasons. Okay. 2 open, ongoing prosecutions. So 2 of the investigations are obviously closed because the individuals are dead. But there's 2 live prosecutions. And so we can't get ahead of the federal court case. A lot of that information will come out in the federal court cases, but we have personally invested our time in making sure that we have looked at any possible international connections to terrorism and adversaries alike. And we've both been down to Quantico. We've both done the laboratory testing. We've both seen the explosives analysis. We've both seen the firearm and physically held it. We are all in on these investigations.
Are we going to be surprised at what you learned?
You know what, Maria? Kash is not kidding. We've been personally briefed extensively on every single detail, nugget, tendril of this case. One is actively in court right now, so out of respect for the case, it's probably more appropriate that I stay quiet on that. However,
they're pretty boring.
I'm not going to tell people what they want to hear. I'm going to tell you the truth, and whether you like it or not is up to you. If there was a big explosive there, right? Given my history as a Secret Service agent and my personal friendship as the director does with the president, Give me one logical, sensible reason we would not have. If you can think of one, there isn't. There in some of these cases, the there you're looking for is not there. And I know people. I get it. I understand.
Wait, you're telling me Soros didn't hire these hitmen to go after God Emperor Trump? Wait, what does he mean by that?
Not there. If it was there, we would have told you.
Well, the other issue that's been talked about recently is this mortgage fraud and the FBI opening a formal case against Letitia James.
So again, ongoing cases, and we take our ongoing investigations very seriously because we don't want to do what our predecessors did, which is talk about them ad infinitum in the public, and then nothing happens. This case, I can tell you, is being handled by our professional pros who are subject matter experts reporting directly to headquarters, which reports to Dan and I. This case, along with others, because it is a case of great public importance. And unlike other leaders who previously sat in these seats, we don't...
Wait, hold on. Boring. Don't care. Super important debate right now.
Well, it's not really
our real black queen, okay? This lady is a queen. She has dominated her Jubilee appearances, is facing off against Andrew in the flesh. Normally he comes in digitally, but now he's here. Oh, shit.
California. I'm your host and moderator, Brian Atlas. A few quick announcements before the show begins. This podcast is viewer-supported. Heavy YouTube demonetization, so please consider donating through Streamlabs instead of soup chatting, as YouTube takes a brutal 30% cut. That's streamlabs.com/whatever. Link is in the description. We prioritize messages that are made via Streamlabs. To read a message is $199, or excuse me, not $199, $200 and up, $199 and up. We will read those in batches at various breaks throughout the debate. There will be no instant TTS, and I do ask that the audience has good discipline when it comes to the super chats and the chats. And if you want to criticize, attack the idea, not the person. Now, if you want to just tip and have 100% of your contribution go towards us, no platform fees, no cut, you can via Venmo or Cash App, whatever, on both. Link is in the description. We're also live on Twitch right now. Pull up another tab, go to twitch.tv/whatever, and drop us a follow on the Prime sub if you have one. Quick disclaimer, the views expressed by the guests do not necessarily reflect the views of the whatever channel. Without further ado, I will introduce our two guests. I'm joined today by Andrew Wilson, host of The Crucible. He's a blood sports debater and political commentator. Also joining us today is Naima. She's a senior at University of Southern California. She's a political commentator and content creator. The topic today is feminism. You will each have up to a 5-minute...
How do you have like a University of Southern California? Like, does the university, like UCLA, like that's in Southern California? Does the University of Southern California, does it encompass a bunch of other universities? Or like who gets to who has dibs on that name? Isn't that kind of like bullshit? It's a private university? Okay, well I'm just saying, like, it seems like, can you really just call yourself that? It's in Southern California? Yeah, but there are other universities in Southern California as well. So how do you get to call yourself the University of Southern California? It kind of minimizes the other universities, I think. Just saying.
Opening statement, and then the rest of the show will just be open conversation, possible prompt changes, and we're gonna have breaks for messages from the audience. Andrew, you're gonna go first with your opening statement, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so my position on feminism is that it's terrible for society. As we go through this, I'll kind of flesh that view out using what I call force doctrine so that you can understand why I have that same set. But force doctrine basically just states that while feminism definitionally is the movement towards egalitarianism and equity for the removal of patriarchal systems, that feminists will always have to appeal to patriarchy in order to try to remove patriarchy, which is ironically hilarious. But a few things I wanted to get to first is that I went through several hours of my opponent's content, and I've actually not ever seen her make a single argument for anything that she believes. I've seen her assert a lot of things, but not an argument for anything she actually believes. So I have some notes here, and I was hoping she could help me clear some of these things up. From the surrounded September 8th, 2024 episode, she says abortion is murder. The prompt is abortion is murder and should be illegal. She asked for a viability time for 20 weeks and thinks abortion before 20 weeks is acceptable. She says the fetus is technically classified as a parasite. The fetus cannot exist outside of the womb and therefore is a parasite. The actual definitions don't support this. An organism living in, on, or with another organism in order to obtain nutrients, grow, multiply. That would be an actual definition of a parasite, or someone or something that resembles a biological parasite living off of, being dependent on, or exploring another. Fetuses can't fit that definitionally. Fetus is the same species. Biological parasites are classified as other, not the same species. Also, mutual biology. Mothers and fetus co-adapt, and mothers are actually healthier while they're pregnant, so it can't really be a parasite. And parasites are rarely temporary, and fetuses are, so and none of that fits the criteria for a parasite. On her video, Middle Ground, Progressives versus Moderates, and this is from January 19th, she says the prompt is, does the far left make Democrats lose elections? She said Kamala was not progressive.
Wait, by what measure? I'm not like anti-baby or whatever, but there's no way that the female body is healthier while pregnant than while not pregnant. There's just, the load is, there's no shot. I don't believe that. I'm curious what metric. I'm sure it'll come up in this one.
Enough, not far left enough. She talks about how women's rights are being stripped, but didn't give any examples of what those are. So I'm actually really confused about a lot of her positions, including her rematch against Charlie Kirk that happened March 5th, 2025, why DEI is unlawful. Her rebuttal to Kirk was bizarre. It just had something to do with there's no racial factor in DEI, even though Kirk gave a pretty good rebuttal for that. So I'd like her to kind of dive into what she actually believes within the paradigm of feminism. But for my positive position, I will say I have a logical argument called force doctrine, and my logical argument called force doctrine refutes the feminist ideology, and it just works, as I explained before. That patriarchy must always be appealed to in order to try to eliminate patriarchy. Women can't enforce their own rights collectively, and men can. Therefore, women always have to appeal collectively to men for their rights. So you're always going to essentially have a patriarchy through force doctrine, and there's nothing women can do about that. So I'm willing to logically go through that and have it examined rigorously, but I'm hoping that with that, you can also describe your position so that I understand them better.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. If you'd like to give your opening statement.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. I do think that is an interesting claim that I don't, state my arguments, because I've actually been watching some of your content, and I've noticed kind of a similar trend as well within these debates where you will ask your questions, but will not.
True!
Put forth your argument, including in your opening statement. You state force doctrine, but instead of elaborating on it, you consistently talk about what I've talked about, which only one of those topics was actually related to feminism. Now, when it comes to my actual beliefs, I think my goal and my hope for this country is to see us advance as a society. I would like to see everyone have bodily autonomy, and I would like for the vast majority of people, if not everyone, to have their basic needs met, and I would like to mitigate any unnecessary conflict between the citizens of this country, genuinely. I think that my main issue with the manosphere and with your force doctrine principle is that it promotes and spreads divisiveness against men and women. It promotes and spreads violence against men and women, and it exaggerates and focuses the differences between the genders. I think that men and women, I know men and women are the same species. We are 99% genetically similar, and the obsessive need to define and separate people based on one singular chromosome is doing both men and women a disservice, socially, economically, and politically, which we can get into. I'm ready to open it up if you want to.
Yeah,
I
sure.
guess actually I'd love to start with a question for you. I would like to go back to the force doctrine theory, if we can. I just kind of want to understand more. I know you've talked a lot about the equal force objection in the past. You've said men have essentially a monopoly on force,
Correct.
if I'm correct? Okay.
Ooh. She's willing to dive into the philosophy aspect, has listened to an argument he's made in the past, is quoting some of it. Oof. Andrew might finally get his internal critique. Oh my God.
Perfect.
Do you want me to walk you through the argument?
No, I'm going to elaborate. Thank you. And that rights exist through physical force, and that our legal system is based on physical force. So I guess I kind of just want to hear you elaborate on that now, if you're welcome.
So you want my argument for the force doctrine?
Yep.
Okay, so what force doctrine is saying is very simple. That feminism, if you at least agree with my definition, and it seems broadly feminists do,
Yeah.
that it's a movement towards egalitarianism and equity and the removal of patriarchy. If you can't have an oppressed class without an oppressor class, at least not from the Marxist feminist view. In the case, if women are being oppressed, they're not being oppressed by wolves, they're being oppressed by men, right? So if that's the case, then my argument to them is that whatever you believe this oppression is, you will actually have to appeal to men in order to either relinquish whatever this oppression is or concede to whatever it is that they want, because collectively women actually cannot overthrow any patriarchal systems. They rely on the force of men. And so if men, anytime they want to, decide to remove women's rights, there's actually not anything women can do about it, but the opposition is not true. The opposite is not true. Women cannot collectivize and take away men's rights.
Okay, so
I feel like this is a very lazy, boring kind of argument, and I feel like it plays a clever trick in order to make the argument circularly true. But it's like saying, like imagine somebody says, I think kids should have more rights, like the right to not have the parents abuse the fuck out of them. And you're like, oh, really? Okay, so you're appealing to children having an expansion of their rights. Yes. Well, who must those children appeal to? Well, adults. Oh, so the people oppressing them? Yeah. Then it sounds like they don't actually get those rights because the people could just go back to oppressing them again. Well, no, we're just asking them not to. Like that. I wonder how long we're going to loop on this, or if she'll, because this is where that argument would tend to. Like, to say that feminism is defeated due to the fact that you have to appeal to men who are the at least physical power holders in society to grant it, that doesn't mean you've defeated feminism. Like, men could grant a different set of rights. We're talking about the set of rights that are granted to society, and even if men are the gatekeepers of those rights, you can still appeal to them, unless you define feminism as a state in which women are able to defeat men physically. And like, that's just dumb, though.
are you essentially saying that women do not deserve the right to fight for their own free will or have free will?
Yeah, that's an odd claim. I'm not making an odd claim. I'm trying to get us to...
Oh my God, please don't do these goofy fucking...
opposition is not true. The opposite is not true. Women cannot collectivize and take away women's rights.
Okay, so are you essentially saying that women do not deserve the right to fight for their own free will or have free will?
Yeah, that's an ought claim. I'm not making an ought claim. I'm trying to get us to the descriptor first. So instead of making a prescriptive statement, I'm starting with a descriptive statement. What is true? And then we can worry about what should be true after we can determine what is true.
Okay, but I'm trying to see, like, structurally, how does that work in the real world? Are you saying that women should not fight for their rights because they...
Listen, let's back up so I can distinguish two things.
Okay.
Is, ought, right? I'm not trying to bridge the is-ought gap. I'm trying to start with a descriptive claim. So if the descriptive claim is true, then we can move to the prescriptive side of it. But right now, you would either need to agree with me that descriptively I'm right or that descriptively I'm wrong.
I can't agree with you to say that descriptively you're right until you apply what you're saying in theory to the practice of modern day.
Fuck, that's not true. Okay, never mind. This is going to be a painful philosophy back and forth then, where Andrew's going to... I wonder if they'll ever talk about a real subject ever, or if it's just going to be the back and forth on this philosophically.
Society. How does your equal force objection, how does this principle work in society? What are you saying in terms
so I'm
of how
saying that
women and
because
men coexist?
I think that because that is the case, that men deserve to have various privileges that they're not given in society, which they should be given in society.
So what are the privileges that you think that men should have that women should not have?
Well, primarily, I think that if you're going to look at an equalization, what I would do prescriptively would be to roll voting back. And that's for both sexes. I think that rolling voting back for both sexes is a good idea, and have some sort of perhaps like one house voting system, or one marriage voting system, or people who have done some sort of collective service to the state for a voting system. I think that those things would all be very good systems for everybody. Now, I would apply that, I would apply that broadly to men, and I would apply that to women. I think that right now men get the shaft because men are required to do a lot of jobs that women are not, which keeps society going, and women are not doing those things. And because of that, I don't understand why it is that women can nullify their votes and disenfranchise them, and most importantly, vote to send them to wars they don't have to go fight in.
So you would like to disenfranchise both men and women?
Mostly. Most of them, yes.
What
would be a better idea.
achieve?
Well, it would achieve the same thing our founders basically wanted to achieve, which is that they thought that you have to have a stake in the country in order to vote.
But if you live in the country, and if you exist in the country, and if you're being legislated by the laws that the country is making, don't you have a stake in that?
No, not always.
You don't?
In fact, many times you don't. Many times, many people actually get more back from the state than they...
That doesn't mean you don't have a stake in something. Just because you get something back more than you give to it doesn't mean you don't have a stake. She should fight on this claim a lot. She needs to write these down and like stay centered. Otherwise, Andrew's just going to walk around the convo with...
put into the state. So that's at the expense of other people.
Who is that?
So there's lots of people who get a mass amount back from the government that they never pay to the government. This can happen through things like Social Security disability, things like welfare, things like even earned income child credit that you may receive even though you don't actually pay anything into the system or very little into the system.
But it's a crime to lie on your taxes and commit. Isn't that tax fraud to claim a dependent?
No. There's just
that is tax fraud.
No. It's not tax fraud. I'm saying there's people who get more out of the system than they put.
Fuck. Okay, never mind. I don't know what her philosophy background or whatever is, but this is these are strong philosophy claims. She should fight very hard on all of these descriptions. The idea that just because you take more from a system than you give back to it means you don't have a stake in it, it literally doesn't make any sense at all. If I'm on a ship and I don't do any rowing, I have a huge stake in the success of that ship, even if I don't row ever. She can tear apart a lot of these premises, but she has to be willing to go through them. You can't, if you grant all of these, the argument is going to naturally lead from them if she doesn't fight on these premises.
Into the system.
Okay, but they're still at stake because they still live here now? Are their lives not at stake if we're
close?
That wouldn't follow that because they live here, they deserve the right to vote, though.
Yes.
No, we're not talking about deserve the right to vote. That's tricky. He short-circuited the argument and he went all the way to the conclusion instead of going through the premises. He said that if you live here but you get more than you give, somehow you have no stake. That was the qualifier. She needs to attack that qualifier.
No taxation without representation. That's the point of representative democracy, is that everyone is represented.
Then how come the founding fathers didn't give everybody the right to vote from the beginning?
I mean, the founding fathers also endorsed and owned slaves.
Yeah, but that's
chattel slavery.
Just let her finish. Go ahead.
I mean, the founding fathers also endorsed and owned slaves.
Okay, but
do you believe in chattel slavery?
Yeah. So you do realize that they could do bad thing, right? I can agree that's bad thing, but that has nothing relationally to do with how they set up the system of government.
I mean, I thought this was going to be a debate on feminism. Honestly, I think that's kind of wild because it sounds like you're disenfranchising men. So who do you think would be? Are you trying to go back? You're taking away.
I'm not disenfranchising men. Calm down. I'll explain.
But if you're taking away the votes of a man because he is not, I guess, landowning, is that what's the criteria for having a vote?
I think ultimately more men would be voting because they would have more stake.
So can I ask, can every man go to prison?
Yeah.
Okay, if they commit a crime, they can go to prison?
Yeah.
Everyone can do that?
Yes.
Okay, and everyone is in this country has to abide by the laws of this country, otherwise they will go to prison, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so why wouldn't they be allowed to vote on the representative that define those laws? That is a stake.
She doesn't have the philosophy to get there, but she has the, I guess, on her feet thinking. That was a really good connection of statements. I really hate how every time he's asked a question and he doesn't like where he thinks it's going, he always gives these stupid looks. He's like incapable of just engaging with honest questions, which is really annoying because jerks off so much about this concept of internal critiques, and then when he's actually quizzed on his beliefs, he's like, yeah, so, yeah. Like, yes, hello, we're building an argument, bro. Calm the fuck down. Jesus Christ.
If you can go to prison for committing a crime that is created by the government, then you do have a stake legislatively in the laws that the government creates.
That still wouldn't follow that you would need to vote.
Yes, you would need to vote.
Why?
You want to vote for the representative.
Oh, shit. She didn't quite build the voting argument up, but she did tear his down, because I'd have to go back and re-listen, but I think his thing was saying that if you don't have a stake, you shouldn't have a vote. And now she's established some people who are net negatives fiscally on a society can still have a stake, right? At the very least in the prison system. So she has overcome that threshold. So he needs to give another reason, or he could just assume by default you shouldn't be allowed to vote, and you have to give positive reasons to vote. But
That create laws that are just and fair to you.
Yeah, why? Like you could have
Because you could go to prison.
Okay,
That's a huge stake.
I'll show you, right? Can kings put you in prison?
Yeah.
Can kings also pass just laws?
Sometimes, maybe.
Okay, so
maybe not.
if kings pass just laws, why do you need to vote?
Well, why did we fight
No,
an entire
answer the
revolution?
question before you ask another one. I just answered all of yours. If a king passes just laws, why would you need to vote?
Because
if a king, oh my God, he's so bad faith. And he knows better too. He does this intentionally. If a king is capable of passing a bad law, then why do you need to vote? It's like that's an incomputable question, because a king implies a monarchy, which implies that you don't have any votes whatsoever at all. So it's a nonsense question disguised as a provocative question. If you really wanted to fight on this, like if you really wanted to, I mean, you could dive into it. You could say, well, there are parliamentary, what do they call parliamentary monarchies? Is that what they call it in England? Well, in England, they have a king. I think theoretically he can, erase, or he can they pass laws on their own? I don't remember how that works, but they still have a parliament that passes laws or whatever, right? Like, this is a nonsense question, though, I think.
Because a king can also pass unjust laws.
So can legislatures.
Sure, but if you have a stake in that and if you're able to represent for your legislator, you can vote a legislator out.
Yeah, but you can
can't
also
vote a king
rebel
out.
against kings. So like,
Ooh, that is true. Oh God, fuck. They're fuck. I was even going to say this earlier. Andrew is correct, but Andrew has to understand that what he's saying is that, okay, and Andrew also needs to understand why voting has been designed the way that it is in this country. The reason why we vote is because we don't want to make it so that every time you disagree with the lawmaker, you have to rebel against them. That's, for instance, explicitly why we're given the power to impeach, because otherwise the only way to remove an elected leader is to kill him or to try to fabricate criminal charges against him. Impeachment gives us a process to remove them from office without having to do either of those two things. So Andrew is technically correct, but this has been thought of already by the founding fathers that he wants to jerk off. Yeah, we don't want to have a rebellion every single time you want to change the law.
Sure, but if you have a stake in that and if you're able to represent for your legislator, you can vote a legislator out.
yeah, but you can
can't
also
vote a king
rebel
out.
against kings. So
Like him saying here, you can rebel against kings, so that means that people also are stakeholders then that are even the subjects of a king, and they obviously feel like they have a strong enough stake to rebel in society too, and they might have been net negatives as well. Like, I think this is all self-defeating. This is like House of Cards tier shit.
that's what I'm saying. Your position doesn't follow. It doesn't actually follow for you to say that because you can be imprisoned inside of a nation, that somehow gives you the right to vote.
Well, because
Hang
you
on.
have a stake. You're saying that
hang on. I'm
people
falsifying
don't
your
have a
claim.
stake
I'm
in-
falsifying.
She was actually falsifying his claim. She might not have built a strong positive argument, but she did successfully tear down his argument. He is correct that she didn't necessarily build a positive argument for the right to vote, but she wasn't doing that yet. She was just attacking his threshold, which she did, I think, successfully. What's the name of a ship that would go to the edge of a solar system? Give me like a sci-fi or video game or anime ship that we would name this after.
Your claim. If you claim kings can make just laws, right?
Yes.
Then I don't understand, why would people need to vote when kings are making just laws?
Well, then why would we leave the monarchy of England? If kings can make just laws, why would we leave?
Well, in that case, you had a nation apart that had a rebellion against the king.
Yes,
that's what was
sure.
going on. But kings have been rebelled against historically under certain circumstances many times.
So you'd like to go back to feudalism? Like you
it's not
don't believe in
feudalism.
democracy? Well, yeah, that is
No, it would be
feudalism is under a monarchy.
It would be called limited democracy, which is exactly what we had here. Do you think we had feudalism because most people couldn't vote here?
We had limited democracy, and then there were like many uprisings against that limited democracy because everyone
No,
deserves
there
the
wasn't
right.
uprisings really against that. The only uprising that I'm aware of in American history against America was the Civil War.
The Civil War, the Civil Rights
But that wasn't
movement,
about
the first
voting.
feminist movement,
That wasn't
the
about
second
voting.
feminist movement, the Civil Rights movement.
No,
the voting rights movement?
no. It's just the
All of
Civil
those were
War
about-
wasn't about voting.
Well,
I mean, it kind of sort of was about giving a class of people the right to vote and be counted as citizens and whatnot, no?
and it was about the owning of chattel slaves.
So not about voting then?
Which is also about human and civil rights.
But not about voting though.
But voting is a civil right.
I don't know. I'm not sure that I believe in
It's
this
about freedom and it's about
conceptual-
representation.
Yeah, yeah. So
the point is representation.
So let's back up.
That's what voting is. Voting is representation and democracy.
I understand, but you haven't actually made the positive case for why people need to be able to vote.
Well, she hasn't. I don't think she's necessarily been tasked with that yet. This is very sneaky. He gave his qualifiers, and she's attacking his. She's technically performing an internal critique of his view, but then he's constantly attacking her by saying she hasn't justified her perspective. She hasn't been tasked with that technically, but
People need to be able to vote because they have a stake in the legislation of this country. If you can be imprisoned at this country, if you can be robbed of your bodily autonomy by the legislators of this country, then you should be able to have a stake in what the laws that those legislators are making.
Well,
no?
let's see if this makes sense. Do you agree with me that individual voters don't actually have very much power at all?
Individual voters, no, but that's the point of a collective voting
Yeah,
body.
I'm with you. So
Yeah.
individuals already don't really have very much power just because they can vote, right?
Sure.
So isn't it the case actually that what you're advocating for is political tribalism? Because you don't have individual power as a voter, you actually have to tribalize with other voters in order to have any sort of collective power, right?
Well, you're taking away power from all the voters,
Well,
so it
can
wouldn't
you
even be
answer my
individual.
question, please? Tribalism, the idea that you as the individual do not have power, right?
Yes.
You do.
it's so boring when you get like a philosophy like debate bro who doesn't want to actually have like a good faith conversation. Like all of these, like it says something about you, I think, if every single time you come away from a conversation, everybody feels like blue-balled or unsatisfied. Or maybe it's just me and I'm not understanding. I don't know. That's a every time I feel like I listen to Andrew debate, overwhelmingly I come away as like, I feel like nothing even, I don't even know what the fuck we talked about. Like it just feels like super unsatisfying. And I feel like a lot of his conversations are like that, basically.
You have to collectivize with other people, right?
Okay, but how is
Hang on,
taking
can
away
you
a
answer
vote...
yes or no?
No.
Yeah. Okay. No.
But
okay.
here's my question: how is taking away more people's votes disincentivizing political tribalism?
Yeah,
because now I have to band with someone. Because now I have to band with someone who has a vote. I don't even get a stake. So you're saying because people don't have enough power to vote, I'm going to take what little power they do have.
You're not
away.
answering my question though.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, but you got to
structurally.
answer my question.
It just doesn't sound like you believe in.
It sounds like you need to
democracy.
answer my question though.
It sounds like your question is meant to trap me because your argument
can you
is
just
riddled with
answer the
logical
question,
fallacies.
please?
It sounds-
What's fallacious about my argument?
You're saying that people do not have a stake in this country, therefore they do not have a right to vote.
It's not what I said.
Yes,
What you're
it
doing.
is.
That's actually almost exactly what he said. You said that because I think that was actually his sole basis for removing people's rights to vote is that not everybody has a stake. And he gave examples of different stakes you could have in society. He said men go off to war or perform jobs that women don't have to perform. And that some people, and that it should be restricted even amongst men because some people get more back than they pay in, and therefore they don't have a stake, and because of that, they don't have the right to vote. You might have other arguments, but that literally is the one that you presented. So I don't know why you're saying now that that wasn't your argument.
What's fallacious about my argument? It's
You're saying that people do not have a stake in this country, therefore they do not have a right to vote.
not what I said.
Yes,
What you're
it
doing
is.
is a straw man fallacy.
Can we go back to
Yeah,
what
you
he
can
said?
go.
Oh my God. And you brought out the fallacy word.
You can go back.
can
What
we
I
go
said
back
to
to
you
that?
specifically is what you're saying doesn't logically follow. And when I'm talking about
He's changing the argument now. What she's saying, she hasn't built a positive argument for herself, sure, but you're the one that gave your position, and it's not surviving a critique from her, and now you're challenging her to justify her position. She doesn't have to yet. She was critiquing yours.
political tribalism, do you agree with me that you do, if you need to have collectives to have actual political power, are you not promoting political tribalism?
If you need to have but that's how voting works. It's about a majority.
So then you are
Yes.
promoting collective political tribalism, right?
So voting and then the will of the majority is essentially political tribalism, is what you're saying?
Well, it's not really the will of the majority.
It is the
Here's
will
what
of the
happens.
majority.
No, not really.
Do you understand how voting works?
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, well then tell me how it's the will of the majority when a California legislator gets elected.
Well, everyone who would like to vote can vote, and then whoever
What
gets
about-
the most
what about the
votes
people in Georgia?
wins. Well, why would a person in Georgia get to vote on a
So it's not
legislator
really
for
the
California state
collective, it's the
legislature?
tribe, right?
But
Like, oh my God. It's like just the least satisfying. This is so cringe. It's so many word games, so many false semantic distinctions, so many like sophistic, that's not a word, sophist arguments. Like, ugh.
then Georgians get to vote for their
Right,
state
so it's a
legislator.
tribe then?
And then all of those legislators come together
So it's a
to create
tribe.
laws.
So it's a tribe?
It's not a tribe, but those are called states.
Yeah,
That's what
states are voting for their own interests, right?
But states will vote
So the states are is everything a tribe then? Like, what a reductive word. Okay.
for the governors.
Yeah.
Why would I get to vote
What-
for the
what-
governor?
wait,
Hold on,
yeah,
pause.
hold on.
Listen to me. Why would I get to vote for the governor of, let's say, Tennessee, if I
Right.
don't live in Tennessee?
Makes sense.
Okay.
So it's almost
Then
like
why
these
would-
individual states, right? They vote along tribal lines for that state's particular interest, right?
Yes, and
They're
then
not-
each state has a representative
right,
in
which
the
they
collective
send?
government.
Sure, in the federal government, right? You're talking about in our Senate and in our Congress, right?
Yes.
Great. So let's start with this. If it is the case that you have California and Nevada, these are two states which are next to each other, you agree,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
Can these states vote against each other's interests when it comes to
course they can.
resources?
In the federal government, yes.
No, even at the state level they can, right?
Why would they be able to at the state level? I can't vote for the Nevada governor. I can't vote for.
Because perhaps there's something
Nevada
that perhaps Nevada has some type of, I don't know, a tax or something like this.
Oh, fuck. I don't know what her government background is, but I'm pretty sure that the area that Andrew is about to broach, I think is a super big no-no, right? Like in the United States of America, aren't states like almost explicitly prohibited from ever doing any type of interstate commerce where you are regulating against the ability of another state to practice some kind of economic thing? I feel like you're super mega not allowed to do this. I guess I could be wrong, but I don't know why I'm saying I could be wrong. No, you can't prefer like, we only buy from Missouri companies here. You would get, like, this is explicitly and literally within the domain of the federal government, of the U.S. Congress.
That they're able to collect, which disproportionately affects Californians in some way. They can do that, right?
No.
What law is that for?
Whatever it would be. They
So
can do it.
does it exist or does it not exist?
Listen, can they do that? Can they do that is my question.
Can Nevada legislate against California?
No, they're not legislating against. Listen to my question. Actually, I want you to repeat my question so I know you actually heard it.
I'm sorry, I'm not a dog.
Can you repeat it? Well, it's called steel manning a position.
Just say the question.
Okay. Can states vote against other states' interests simply by having a neighboring state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say, for instance, that you were to have, like, I don't know, trucks which went between Nevada and California, right?
Yes.
And California took advantage of this by raising taxes on gasoline, but only on the border areas where these goods came in. This disproportionately hurts Nevada truckers for some reason, right? They can't do that, right?
Yes, they can do that.
Okay, great. So in California,
I feel like a state might even be able to sue another state if you were caught doing stuff like that. Like if that was the reason why, but I don't know how that.
if that was beneficial to Californians, they would basically be voting for their tribe against Nevada, right?
But is that happening?
It
Or are
does
you just
happen.
trying to use a hypothetical?
No, there's tons and tons of instances where different states do various things, even asking for federal money in overages compared to other states for different
That's a different thing, though. You're petitioning the federal government is different than what you're talking about for this, but.
problem. Same thing with disaster support. They definitely are all trying to support their tribe, right?
Okay, so because states can potentially, hypothetically, vote against another state's interest, men and women should not have the right to
No,
vote.
that's not the conclusion.
You should also, I think there's also something to be said for, it's that one, is it the clown mirror? We named one of these like debate things where every single time, Andrew runs into this so much, where every single time you try to summarize your interlocutor's position or you try to summarize what they're saying, you can't do it. You could argue, and in some cases it might just be the person's legitimately just not listening, but if you find that when you're arguing with people, people can never summarize your position back to you ever, then you're failing to communicate, or you're just dodging any type of summarizing of your position because you think that if they can summarize it, and this does happen emotionally, you think that if they can summarize my position, they probably have an argument against it, so then you just ignore or you deny all summaries of your positions.
But that was your argument.
No,
the privilege is,
no.
you
Again,
stated
do you know what a
no voting,
descriptor
both
is?
sexes, one marriage voting system.
Why don't you understand the difference between a descriptor and prescriptor? What did I prescribe?
What you prescribed is one voting system. Is a voting system in which
What
both
I'm
men
doing-
and women are disenfranchised.
Yeah, what I'm doing right now is I'm giving you descriptors so we can determine if it's tribalism or not, because you said it's not tribalism to have collectivism in voting blocks, which is insane.
But what you haven't been able to answer is why disenfranchising more voters is somehow solving political tribalism.
Let her get to the end
All
of the
right.
sentence, please.
Well, let me explain it
Sure.
the best way that I possibly can.
I hope
Your
you try.
worldview promotes political tribalism. So what happens is this. NGOs can go to our government and they can bribe them for voting blocks. And that's exactly what they do. Non-government organizations do this, and lobbyists do this. And what they do is they raid the treasury from people like you and me so that they can bribe certain portions of the electorate in order to incentivize them to collectivize. That's why black people often vote as a monolith, for instance. They vote monolithically, up to 80, 90% together, especially in national elections, because they're made certain promises out of the treasury from the electorate, usually at the expense of other forms of voters. This is 100% tribalism.
So how are NGOs bribing politicians, influencing who black people as individuals choose to vote for?
How do NGOs do that?
I just don't understand.
She needs to stop fighting on like any empirical ground here, because if you grant him all of the philosophical ground, he's going to be able to dig up an example or just make one, or he doesn't even really have to justify his argument.
And how you're saying, I mean, I agree that NGOs should not be bribing and lobbyists shouldn't be bribing, but instead of
I mean, that's
saying,
what they do, though, right?
Okay, but we're trying to get back to your claim that
I'm in the
less
middle of
people
my
shouldn't
claim.
vote. Okay, well, I'm responding because this is a conversation.
Yeah.
Sure. So we're trying to get back to your claim that less people from both sexes should be able to vote.
Yeah, no, that's not where we just were.
That's your initial
Yeah,
claim,
but now
yes?
you're just pivoting. Where we just were was.
Well, you're not letting me
you
finish my
said,
sentence.
No,
If you let me
because
finish my sentence,
you're
you can go
pivoting.
back.
We're talking right now about whether tribalism is descriptively true in your voting system.
I understand that, but we're trying to get back to your initial claim because you have
Yeah.
a very important claim to defend. You're trying to
I
take
am
votes away
defending
from
it.
the American people
Yeah.
poorly, but let's get
Oh,
into
okay.
it. So NGOs bribe, lobbyists bribe,
Yeah.
and that is impacting who and what politicians are promoting. I would agree with that statement. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, not just what they're promoting, but also they are setting the precedent for laws themselves.
Okay, yeah,
So
sure.
they actually, I would even argue back that NGOs and private think groups write the laws in which politicians most often execute, and so do bankers as well.
I agree with that. So why would taking away votes from the average American and singular citizen prevent NGOs and lobbyists from having an ability to impact and predict and create laws?
Yeah, so if you move to stakeholder democracy, this idea that you had to have some sort of public service or something like this, it actually collectivizes down the voting pool, which adds responsibility to the voters who can then be held accountable, which right now voters can't be. That's why it's so important. So you're
Voters
saying,
can be held
so you're
accountable.
saying how?
Well, legislators will create laws that hold those voters accountable. They're the ones who have to follow them. Do you not have
How
to
are
follow
they?
the
Well,
laws?
that's not you being held accountable.
It is being held accountable.
No. So right now under tribalism, you can get laws passed which affect me, but benefit you. I can't go like hold you somehow accountable for that.
But that's how a majority voting works. That's how
I
democracy
know,
works.
which is why I want limited democracy where we can actually hold people
because
accountable.
you just want to be in charge.
How would I be in charge if it's stakeholder democracy?
Well, you said one marriage voting system.
That could be one way of doing it, yes.
Okay, what are the other ways of doing
Another
that?
good way would be public service.
So whoever
perhaps
does
up
a
to
public service.
Perhaps up to 3 to 5 years unpaid, or military service would be good.
So during this public service in which people are working 3 to 5 years unpaid, how are they paying for food and groceries and housing?
Yeah, so the state would take care of that just like they do in the military.
The state would take care of that like they do in the military. And how do you plan on getting that passed?
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, because
let's
are
say
you
I could
not
never
trying to
get it
create-
passed. We're arguing the ideology of the system. What does that do with anything?
What's the point in creating an ideology that will never work?
How are you going to get Marxism passed?
You're not.
So aren't you a Marxist? But you're a Marxist, right?
Oh, did you know that?
Well, I don't know.
told
That's
you
what
that.
your videos seem to imply, that you believe in
Did I
Marxist
ever say that I
feminism.
was in Marxist?
Oh, I don't know. Are you a socialist?
On a certain level.
Okay, how are you going to get socialist? Like, that's silly.
He tried to. That was such a hard pivot there on a bad assumption. Oh my God.
Us making the comparison contrast between like socialism, capitalism has no bearing on whether or not I could somehow get this passed or have some plan to get it passed.
Okay.
I'm arguing about the ideology here.
Do you want to understand my belief or do you just want to guess?
Well, hang on. What does that have to, do you know what I just said, though?
Well, I mean, you just called me a Marxist.
Do you
just called me
agree?
a socialist.
Well, if
You
you're not a
don't even know
Marxist,
what I believe.
that's fair. But do you realize that we're an ideology? If we're doing contrast worldview and ideology, it's a non sequitur to ask me, well, how are you going to get it passed? What does that have to do with anything?
Well, why would you create a worldview that fundamentally cannot work in practice? That
Well,
sounds
it's
like
not a
waste of time.
worldview that fundamentally cannot work in practice.
you couldn't
Even
say
if
how
I
it works in
couldn't, even if I couldn't prescriptively tell you, like the next political chain of things we do to get there has nothing to do with whether or not the worldview in practice would work.
Well, do you have any practical guesses for how we could apply this to a modern day society?
Well, I just told you how we would apply it. You would have stakeholder democracy.
Okay, so that's just so one day we're just going to flip a switch and have that. Like, I don't understand.
No, what do you mean? Okay, you could have an amendment for it. You could repeal the 19th Amendment. You could.
So you want to repeal the right to vote?
Or just replace it. It wouldn't be. What I'm talking about is universal suffrage. You keep on making a conflation in terms. You think that because I say universal suffrage, that means no suffrage. I'm talking about limited suffrage.
So who gets to decide who gets the right to vote?
Didn't I literally just tell you who gets to decide who gets to vote?
Okay, so everyone who participates in this public service gets the right to vote.
That could be one way to do it. Yes.
Okay, and that anyone could do that. Who wanted to?
Yeah. People could do it if they're willing to give up X amount of years of their lives for unpaid service, so that they could then vote.
But it's not unpaid service because the government would be paying for their food and their housing.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be getting anything additional to that.
Okay, well, why not just have civil servants who are already?
Because civil servants have specific jobs to do, like working at the DMV and stuff like that, and working in the Social Security office.
So you're basically saying anyone who does community service should get the right to vote?
No, some sort of civil occupational service under the state. That could be like civil firefighting work, maybe. It could be civil paramedic work. It could be there's all sorts of different things you can look at for stakeholder democracy. When we've seen it applied around the world, it's been somewhat successful.
And
anything that's not like fucking emergency services. So like a guy working at like a desk job, a bureaucratic job, or whatever, would get the right to vote. What do you like?
Laws apply to everyone in the society, or just the people who?
Yeah, they
choose to
still
participate
apply
in
to
this
everyone.
democracy?
Yeah.
Okay, so how can you create and apply a law to people who are not represented? I just don't understand. Morally, how do you justify
There's
it?
nothing immoral about it.
There's nothing immoral about it. I mean, but that's
like
kind of
I would say it's more immoral. Why is it moral for an 18-year-old to nullify the vote of a 41-year-old? The 18-year-old doesn't even know what they're voting for. How's that moral?
Well, because the 18-year-old is still subject to the laws of the state.
Yeah, but they don't even know what they're voting for.
Can an 18-year-old go to jail?
Fuck. I think, in my opinion, I haven't read any political philosophy on this, so I'm sure there are better answers, more prepared answers. But in my opinion, the reason why these things are really important is because if you're the leader of a group, any good leader knows that you have to be able to bring everybody along with you. It can't just be your top earners or your top performers or just the highest up people. You have to be able to bring along everybody, even people that might not otherwise have a voice. Otherwise, your shit just fucking falls apart. So like, if you want to have a well-functioning system, a well-functioning democracy, everybody kind of has to feel like they're like along for the ride in a way that they have a voice that's heard and respected and everything else. Because if you just say that like, oh, well, the only people who should be able to decide are the most powerful and the wealthiest, it's like, okay, yeah. And then as soon as people aren't happy, they're just going to like have a coup and execute you. Like, it's not a good system. You have to make everybody feel like they're kind of involved to some extent.
Jail for 20 years.
A 16-year-old can. Should they be able to vote?
16-year-old can't go to jail.
Yes, they can. 16-year-olds can go to jail for life. Should they be able to vote?
I mean, no, but why?
Well, why
would they be
not?
going
Why
to
not?
jail?
The laws apply to them, though.
Why would a 16-year-old be going?
Hang on,
to
I
jail?
don't understand. Because he murdered someone.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, if you murder someone, that's a whole.
So I don't understand. Why can't he vote? The laws apply to him. Why can't he vote?
If I were her, I would actually concede that, and I would say, actually, that is a decent argument, Andrew. I think actually 16-year-olds probably maybe should be able to vote, depending on circumstances. That I actually think there are good, strong arguments for that.
Yeah, but we all understand.
No, we all understand it's not an argument. Why does a 16-year-old get to vote, even though all the laws apply to the 16-year-old? Why does he get to vote?
Not all the laws apply. They start in juvenile detention, and then at 18, they get the right to
so
vote.
laws apply to 16-year-olds?
But you're retried at 18.
So
like when
laws
you
apply to 16-year-olds?
Some laws, of course.
Okay,
yes.
great. Why can't they vote then?
So babies should get the right to vote.
That's my question to you. That makes no sense. Exactly. So why do we limit it to 18?
Well, that's the age that we've defined as being a legal adult. That's the age that we as a country have universally agreed with our right to vote is.
Yeah, but what makes that a good idea? Just because you arbitrarily.
That's the
but just because you arbitrarily say, for instance, that because you're 18 and you're an adult, like you can't buy cigarettes, you can't buy beer, you can't rent a car, but you're an adult, and now you can vote in the participation of democracy. At least raise it.
So you'd like to raise it?
At least raise it.
So you would like to universally raise the age to vote? I think that would be a better idea than like not allowing
No.
anyone.
What I say is at least do that. But the thing is, like, you're actually inconsistent here. Your whole argument is to say if laws affect people, they should have a right to vote. But we have an entire cast of people from the age 17 down who laws apply to and can't vote. And you just are like, you shrug that off like you didn't contradict yourself.
I'm pretty sure it has something to do with brain development. But we've all, like, you have to have an
not fully
age
developed till what, 25 according
but how
to
do you have a
the
society
studies?
in which you don't have an age that someone becomes a legal
I
vote?
agree, but why couldn't you have a society in which you had stakeholder democracy? It would be, it's the same logic.
So if you're saying that we should not disenfranchise children, why would you then disenfranchise people who are legal adults?
When did I ever make the claim that I wanted children to be able to vote?
You just said that if everyone should have a
No,
right
I
to
told you that your view is inconsistent. If it is the case propositionally, you say, Andrew, if laws apply to people, they should be able to vote. Except, I don't know, everybody 17 and under. That's inconsistent.
Because the laws
Hang
do
on.
apply to children
It's
differently than they
inconsistent
apply to
and a
adults.
contradiction.
But laws do apply to
What about the
children
laws that don't?
differently than
What about the laws that don't? What about the laws where you're 17 years old and you can be tried as an adult?
Well, those are to protect like public freedom. I mean, but everyone loses civil liberties when they are a danger to the public.
Yeah, but
That's everyone.
do you understand that you're making a contradiction when you say if laws should apply to all people should have a right to vote because they have laws which can be applied, they can be sent to prison was your example. That would have to include everyone under the age of 18.
But people under the age of 18 don't go to adult
Yes,
prisons.
they do all the time.
They don't all the time, actually. It's considered exceptional. That's why you have to do like an exception to actually try somebody as an adult. It's not generally the norm that people under the age of 18 are tried as adults. Also, I'm trying to think if you have the right to vote, even if you have like a full-time caretaker and you have like exceptional like mental disabilities, you're still allowed to vote in the United States, right? They don't take away your right to vote if that's the case, right?
Yes, they do. That is. You want me to give you sources of 16, 17-year-olds tried as adults and sent to adult prisons?
Okay, but that's like an exception for exclusively horrific crimes. I mean, those are violent offenders.
Does the law apply to them or not?
To violent offenders, if you are a threat to public safety, yes.
Okay.
Everyone who
Then
is a
if
threat
the
to public
law
safety,
applies to them and they can be sent to jail, then by your logic, they should be able to vote, which
But for
means
those
you're in
offenders,
contradiction.
To those offenders, they are sent to juvenile detention centers until they turn 18, and then they are sent to an adult prison.
No, they're sent often to adult centers, even at 17, to adult prisons.
You can be sentenced as an adult, but you can't be sent to an adult prison at the age of 16.
This would depend widely on the state that you're in. It's not rigorously enforced across the board like you think. There's not like, I don't think there's federal laws which say that.
Well,
But
then I
even if
think
it were the
that's
case,
wrong.
I'll just grant it.
Well, then that's wrong.
I'll even grant the entire thing. It still wouldn't matter. Laws apply to them. They can still be sent to prison. They fit both of your criteria. Therefore, if you say they shouldn't be able to vote, your worldview's in contradiction.
Well, then I think that's wrong. I don't believe that children should be tried as adults until they become adults.
So no
I
laws
disagree
apply
with
to
that.
children?
No.
Well, why shouldn't they be able to vote?
A threat to public safety always applies to everyone. Threats to public safety always apply to everyone.
Yeah, but why shouldn't they be able to vote if laws apply to them? That's your example.
Laws apply to children, but they are not in practice punished in the same way that they apply to adults. It's applied.
Can they be punished?
Of course they can.
Then why can't they vote?
But you have to have some way to maintain societal control. Children aren't just allowed to do whatever the fuck they want because they're
Right.
kids.
You need to be able to have some sort of societal control. So
Yes.
this would mean necessarily disenfranchising some people, wouldn't it?
It would mean necessarily disenfranchising children. Yes, they're not
No,
adults.
it would also mean disenfranchising prisoners. Do you want prisoners to vote on their right to own guns in a prison?
Not the right to own guns in a prison.
Well, then you're
But I do
disenfranchising
think
them.
that people who were in prison and then leave prison should then have
Felons?
the right to vote.
But they're disenfranchised currently under the law, right?
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. If you're a felon, you can't vote.
Yes. Oh, well, once they leave, yes, I do think that that's disenfranchisement, and I think Florida just rolled that back.
Yeah, but
Florida.
what's wrong with disenfranchising like murderers for life?
What's wrong with disenfranchisement? Well, they would be in jail for life. If
No,
they
no, no.
committed a
They're
murder.
out of jail. They're just felons, so they can't vote.
Well, yeah, I think that felons should be able to vote once they
Should
have
felons be able to own guns?
No, because
Oh, well, I don't understand you. So you're just again,
But
you're
you
so inconsistent with
Holy
your
shit,
disenfranchisement.
dude! Like the amount, like he switched it around to doing an internal critique of her position, and it's like the most stringent internal critique like ever. My God, she has to like. I like how he jumped off of his critique though, but
Do you understand?
What?
Disenfranchisement should exist so long as someone is a threat to public safety. The reason why prisoners are not allowed to vote who are currently in prison is because they are a threat to public safety.
16-year-olds aren't a threat to public safety.
No, but they're children. You can't allow anyone
So
to vote
you
who's a
can
child.
arbitrarily disenfranchise people based on the fact that you think they're not capable of making good voting decisions, right?
No, a child is legally different than an adult.
Because they can't make
You can't
good,
have sex with a child.
Because
That
they
would be
can't make
statutory
because they
rape.
can't make good decisions.
No, because they're legally classified as a child. Do you not understand
Because
what a
they
child
can't make good decisions.
is? Because they're 2 and 3 and 4. They're not legally an
So
adult.
they can't make good decisions.
No, they can make good decisions, but generally speaking, you can't have children vote. There's a
I
legal
agree
age
with
to
you.
vote.
You can't.
Okay.
But why is it then that if I were to say that I only want 25-year-olds to vote, I would be disenfranchising?
But you didn't say you only want 25-year-olds to vote. You
do you
said
understand?
that you only want one marriage voting system per household.
Yeah,
You
well, that's
said
one way, yeah.
You want less of
But-
both adult men and
But do
adult
you understand how
women
my
to
view
be
is
able to vote.
consistent, but yours isn't? Because if you were to agree with me that you wanted, like, okay, Andrew, I would compromise the 25-year-olds voting, you've now disenfranchised everyone from the ages of 18 through 24.
If you were considered
all
a legal
overnight.
adult, you should be able to vote. That's my state. If you are considered a legal adult, if you are tried as an adult, if you are allowed to buy a house, have a child.
But that leads to the problem is that leads to political tribalism. So, like, for instance, why is it a healthy society to have?
she also shouldn't grant this. What is this obsession with political tribalism? Or is Andrew given an argument for why that's bad? What does he even mean by that? That you have just voting blocks that are interested in their own thing? I don't even know what his issue is here.
Men and women who are married voting against each other. That's a terrible idea.
Because they're both like, but if a man commits a murder, does his wife go to jail for that crime?
No.
No, because they're not the same fucking person.
What does that have to do with anything?
If they're different people and they're both tried differently and they both have separate lives.
Like, I like how he can't even begin to fathom, like, if this is a good faith conversation, like, try to connect that in your brain. I believe in you. I think you can do it. Like he just, she's really quick on her feet and thinking about this, even though she hasn't, like, obviously spent a lot of time individually diving in on this, unfortunately. But, like, it was a good question. So why would a man and a woman both be allowed to vote and then be able to vote against each other? Isn't that foolish? And it's like, well, hold on. Like, if a man commits a crime, then the woman doesn't go to jail with the man, right? That's a good challenge. And I think it would be worth it to sit and think about that for a moment. And he could probably think of an answer, but instead he just, like, immediately rejects, like, how does that even relate? It's not even like, Jesus, it's so cringe.
No.
No, because they're not the same fucking person.
What does that have to do with anything?
If they're different people and they're both tried differently and they both have separate lives and separate bank accounts and separate bodily and physical autonomy, then they should each get a stake in this government. No.
Well, that literally has nothing to do with what I just asked.
They're not the same
real
person,
quick,
so why should they be represented?
You remember how I
Oh
said
my
yes and no to your question? Can you do that for me? Remember how I was like yes and just answered it? Can you actually do that for me too?
I don't remember that at all.
You literally just asked me that question. You said, if a husband's carted off to prison, does her wife go to prison? I said no.
Okay.
Can you do that for me too? And then give your explanation? Because otherwise I don't know your actual position.
And then give the explanation.
So now I'd like to know, do you think it's a good idea for wives and husbands to be able to vote against each other's interests?
They should both have a vote, yes.
Well, but they can't vote against each other's interests, right?
That's circumstantial. They may not, they might.
Yeah, they may not, they might. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But why is it good that option's even there? It seems like a terrible idea.
Because in a representative democracy, everyone should be represented with a vote.
Yeah, I get that's a descriptive truth, but you're not telling me why that should be the case. If I were to give you the counterclaim here, I would say if you had like one household voting or something like this, it would be much more uniform and wouldn't divide families against each other. And that's exactly what the vote has done.
But they're both subject to the same legislative, like they can both be legislated independent of each other, right?
No, well, not really. One cannot at that point make a decision that doesn't affect the other one usually.
Yes, they can.
Not really. What?
I mean,
Oh, yeah, she was going to say Roe v. Wade.
V. Wade. That only affects a woman's body, right? No?
You think that if a man is married to a woman and she goes and aborts his baby, that doesn't affect him?
Of course it does, but it affects him differently than his body.
But it's still, but that's my whole point is that everything they do in this household is going to affect each other.
Sure.
So you wouldn't want to promote systems which divide husbands against.
Did you ever entertain this level of disingenuous argumenting? Apart from fighting it with an audience, he usually just fights on every sentence, making it very. I mean, if you want to go and like own them or whatever, then maybe. But I mean, like if you're trying to have like some kind of good faith discussion, then it's never happening in an environment like this, of course.
Wives.
But they're individuals. No.
What does that do with anything?
Are they the same person or not?
This is not what's in dispute.
Are they the same person or not?
Okay, no.
Then why should they not each have an individual liberty? What if they get a
Because
divorce?
you don't want to set up systems that divide them against each other. That's a bad
then marry
idea.
someone who doesn't want to vote with you. But that's.
No, do you understand that like people's preferences change over time, and there could be various reasons in which, if you have a tribal type of mentality, like take abortion for instance. Abortion's a great one. Do you think that it's possible that women, for instance, could hold it against their husband and say things like "do this or I'll abort your child"? They could actually do that, right?
Yeah, hypothetically, sure.
Yeah, and have
that
done
would be immoral.
And have done that.
That would be immoral.
Yeah, but you wouldn't say they couldn't go get the abortion, would you?
But would you say a man?
But hang on. Answer the question first.
Jesus
You wouldn't
Christ.
say that they shouldn't be allowed to do that, though, would you?
Well, if it would be disenfranchising millions of other women who aren't.
No. That's yes or no, please. You wouldn't say that you would not actually say that they should not be allowed to get the abortion, right?
No, I think everyone should have access to.
Okay, so even if it were the case that a woman, right, was holding the man basically emotionally hostage with her pregnancy and said, "Do what I say or I'll get an abortion," right? You would not make any claim that she could or could not get that abortion, would you?
I would make a claim that what she's doing is immoral, but I wouldn't make a claim that because
should
one
anything
person is
happen to a
immoral.
woman who does that?
Yeah,
What?
I think. I mean, that's blackmailing.
It's not blackmail.
I think on a level, it's emotional blackmail. I
Yeah.
think you should be
So
able to
what should happen?
emotional
Should they go to jail?
blackmail. I mean, maybe pay damages or a fine.
A fine?
Yeah.
How much should the fine be?
I don't know.
$200?
How much is an abortion?
They'd be the same as an abortion.
Can I ask you a question?
So just to get this right, well,
I like how she gave. I think she's just really quick on her feet. Because I don't think she's thought through this at all. But she gave like a very legally coherent answer, right? If somebody could do a thing in a bad way, that would never be an argument for banning the entire thing, right? Like somebody could theoretically publish a tweet that's defamatory, but you wouldn't ban all tweets. You would just hold people accountable when they, through tort, I guess, or through criminal stuff when they engage in bad behavior. You wouldn't ban that whole class of thing.
I want to finish this real quick,
No,
and then we can move back. Well, no, you can't until I finish the inquiry.
Okay,
but
well,
then
I'm not going to answer your question.
But you can inquire back. I just want to finish this inquiry.
Or guns, sure.
Inquiry, that's all. So just to make sure I got this right, you have now said that the tribal voting does indeed pit husband against wife, has the potential to do so, right? And I've even conceded to specific examples of where it would be in a woman's interest to vote against her husband, to have a right to do something which could be used against him later. And then said, well, the punishment should be like, oh, maybe she pays a fine if something like that happens. And how are you going to convince people that that's a better system than one household voting? That's a terrible system.
Because then the leader of that household, or the head of that household, has control over the right and the will of every single person in that household. You're fundamentally denying people free will. They're not allowed to. Yes, they are. Because if they're both
Fundamental denying of free will, huh?
Because if they're both legislated by the same government.
You can also start to make really weird arguments against the types of societies that you might prefer. Although, hypothetically, if he just wants to disenfranchise all women from voting, he wouldn't run into that issue. Because I would say, what if you're like a man and a woman and like, well, let's not get married, because if we do get married, now our vote, we had 2 votes because we were in 2 separate households, and now we only have 1 vote because we're in a combined household. So let's just say separate in a different household to like double our vote. But he would just say women shouldn't be allowed to vote, so I guess it doesn't matter.
And one of them has no say in who is elected into that government.
So?
But still, because you're still
They still have
impacted
free
by
will.
laws. But you're still impacted by laws.
So what? You're being impacted by laws when you're 17. They can't vote. You have a consistency
Not at the
issue.
same extent as an 18-year-old.
Oh
Not at the
my
same
God.
They
extent.
can have it to the same extent as an 18-year-old.
In very rare exceptions, but you're
Yeah, but they
fighting
can
on,
then,
but
so you're
fighting on an
disenfranchising
exception.
people.
But look at you, you're around the fringe. You're fighting on an exception. We're talking about the general population.
Even
right
in the
now.
general population.
I'm not talking about murderers. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about
So
serial
let's start
killers.
with
I'm
this.
not talking about school shooters.
I don't think it's generally speaking a good idea to let 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds to vote, to disenfranchise the votes of people who are politically informed, because they're being used as a leverage voting block for elitists. And that's what's actually happening. What's actually happening was what you just said. NGOs and lobbyists are lobbying Congress to get various things passed. And what they do is they try to leverage the votes from a tribalist purview in order to get the things that they want, right? And 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds are highly impressionable, right? So we're 22, 23, 24, 25-year-olds highly impressionable. And one way that you could eliminate this idea that they could be gone after by the parasitic NGOs who run things is by just simply limiting the ability to vote to people who have such a political interest that they actually do social service for up to 5 years, so that then we can trust them with the right to vote.
Okay, I have 2 statements. Can you let me get through them?
Sure.
Okay, so here's number 1. I agree that lobbying generally is bad. I'm not here for NGOs. I don't think anyone really is. I mean, and the whole point of why we don't like them is because we want to be represented by our legislators fairly and accurately, and we don't want it to be in the control of a private interest group.
So lobbying's bad.
Yes, generally, I think that lobbyists and NGOs are not
bad.
good. But what I don't understand is, if that's the issue, why not ban NGOs? Why not have a platform that's standing against NGOs and lobbyists? I think that'd be something great.
Yeah,
If
so
you
this
did
is
that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so this is a great question, but here's the problem, right? This is the leverage of tribalism, and why you can't really do that. So on social issues, right? There are NGOs out there, for instance, who have a vested interest in abortions being legal, right? This goes out into the social ethos, and now we're back.
Yeah, Kona, the reality is not all disenfranchisement. It sounds bad, though, to own that position, but not all disenfranchisement is bad. There are probably some groups of people that should be disenfranchised in certain ways, and that's not like necessarily a horrible thing. Like, for a variety of reasons, children don't have the same rights as adults when it comes to entering business deals, signing contracts, or whatever, but because they don't have the same rights, they also don't necessarily have the same expectations or responsibilities. Like a child is generally not held accountable in the same way for crimes. The state will provide more for a child who's homeless or some bullshit or whatever. You've got greater protections in criminal stuff. But then you would have to walk through each class. Like, when can we justify disenfranchisement versus when do we say, like, this just disenfranchisement is justified or whatever, right? Or justified versus unjustified.
Battling over the social issue, we have become tribal, right? We become tribal. Then you have NGOs who battle against it, let's say, this social issue. They also are making a ton of money off of the counter battle, let's say, also utilizing political tribalism. The whole idea here is divisive tribalism is what enables NGOs to begin with. They make a ton of money off of it, especially off of race hustling and DEI.
So then again, why not just ban NGOs and lobbyists?
Yeah, you can't
allow everyone to still have a vote in a representative
I'm giving you the descriptor.
I think it's hilarious that you keep calling democracy tribalism.
It leads to tribalism, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
Full democracy leads to tribalism.
So
There's no way around it.
sports.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so does sports, sure.
so should we ban sports?
Why would you ban sports?
Why would you ban
That's the
democracy?
Why
total
would you
non sequitur.
ban-
It makes no sense.
Why would you ban a huge percentage of the population from voting?
Because I would want to avoid political tribalism so that elitists can't exploit low information voters, which they do right now, in order to enslave the planet.
So you're basically saying that people are too stupid to have the right to vote?
Yes.
That's dumb, dude.
Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, of course I think people are stupid.
Well, then what are you arguing with me
Because
about?
if I want a right to
too stupid
vote,
to
then
vote.
I should give them the right to vote.
Why? But listen, think about what you just said. Yeah, dude, I agree that people are too stupid to vote, but give them the right to vote anyway.
I don't think people are too stupid to vote. I
Why?
think
So they're
people
too
are
stupid to function, but
I
they're
don't think they're
smart
too
enough.
stupid to
Come
function.
on. You think that people who go and generally cast a ballot are high information voters, or they barely even know what the hell they're talking about?
I mean, do you have a statistic on how many of them
Yeah,
are?
you.
Like, imagine if you have to try to brainwash a group of people. Couldn't you argue? These are all philosophy arguments. And this is like the cringiest line of argumentation. But like, couldn't you argue that it's actually easier to brainwash people if only the man votes in the family? Because now I have to brainwash half the people. That theoretically, there's a whole tier of propaganda that might not have worked on on men and women voting or on different groups of people voting. But since I only have to focus on like men head of households, I can tailor make my NGOs and propaganda to just brainwash one group. Like, there's always interest that can be captured. But this is stupid. I don't know.
I just don't understand morally. How do you justify?
There's nothing immoral about it.
There's nothing immoral about. I mean, but that's
like
kind of
I would say it's more immoral. Why is it moral for an 18-year-old to nullify the vote of a 41-year-old?
Law, right?
No, they're not.
Sorry.
That they should not be allowed to get the abortion, right?
No.
Race hustling and DEI.
So then again, why not?
Yeah, so this is a great question, but here's the problem, right? This is the leverage. So lobbying's bad.
Yes, generally, I think that ban NGOs. Why not have a platform that's standing against NGOs and lobbyists? I think that'd be something great.
Yeah,
If
so
you
this
did
is
that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so tribalism, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
Full democracy leads to tribalism.
So
There's
does
no way around it.
sports.
Yeah. What?
Stupid to vote. I
Why?
think
So they're
people
too
are
stupid to function, but
I
they're
don't think
smart
they're
enough.
stupid
Oh,
to
come
function.
on. You think that to go tested, right? But I have a better plan than an IQ test. I would not disenfranchise a person from being able to vote because they have like an average IQ.
Yeah.
What I would do is disenfranchise a person to vote if they were low information. One way I could find out if they were really politically motivated is if they sacrificed years of their lives to the state in order to get that right to vote.
So you want to punish people for being stupid?
No, I just don't want them to nullify well-informed votes from people who are smart and on the issues and understand the issues.
But taking away someone's vote would be punishing them in a sense.
It's not punishing them.
Yeah, it kind of
It's
is.
actually stopping them from punishing themselves and the rest of society because they're easily exploited by social elites.
That's fair. I mean, but why not then just target education? Like, why not then
We
try to
spend
fund
5% of the entire GDP of the United States on education. It's the highest anywhere in the world, and we have some of the dumbest people on planet Earth. Our literacy rate is barely, you know what the literacy rate is.
Yeah, it's garbage.
It's trash. And
Yeah.
we spend 5%, the biggest GDP on planet Earth. We spend 5 total % of our GDP on education. And you think that education is going to solve the problem of the low
Well,
information
the
voter?
issue is that people are stupid. Help them be smarter.
There's a lot of that is a mixture of genes and environment and nourishment and all sorts of different things. It's like you can't, this whole progressive
Well, if it's
idea.
environment and nourishment,
hang on.
then why not attack
This
those
whole
things?
stupid progressive idea of like,
boy.
you just can just educate people into whatever it is. It's like, no, you really can't. Like, there's a lot of people who are just going to be fucking janitors, okay? There's a lot of, yeah, okay?
all right.
There's a lot of
Janitors shouldn't be
people
allowed
who
to
are just
vote,
going to be
I guess.
fucking
Okay.
janitors
There are,
and who
but
are
they-
just going to be fucking toilet bowl cleaners and who are just going to be fucking bartenders and are really not meant to build fucking rocket ships, okay?
I know, but they're still subject to laws. They
Yeah,
still
I
get
know,
a
but
say.
just mean
and
to-
it's
but
frustrating,
don't
but it's
you-
just a fact.
Yeah,
If I want
yeah.
free will and they want, and you want free will, and we deserve the right to vote, then they do
No,
too.
you're not eliminating free will by this.
You are,
You're
though.
protecting the rest of society from low information voters destroying their lives. Like,
Yeah,
do you
but you
really
still
think?
can't
Let me ask
take
you this.
someone else's free
Let me
will
ask you
because
this.
they're
If you were to, yeah, but you're not really doing that. What
You
you're
are.
doing.
A vote is an exercise in free will.
Let me ask you this: if you had to choose,
Yes.
right, for your family,
Sure.
and you knew that you could move them to a place.
Wait, real quick. There's not going to be something stupid like a railgun can't shoot. Oh my God. Can railguns not shoot in front of? They can't. It'll block it. Whatever.
Where there was a bunch of people who were highly
I'll
informed
figure it
on
out.
political processes in the local community, or you can move to a place where people didn't give a shit, right? Which place would you prefer them to be?
I would prefer them to be in the higher.
Of course,
Obviously.
right? At
Yeah.
the place where the people are the most
Hold on.
informed.
Speaking of which, my mother's calling me. Here, I'm a screener. Sorry, Mom. Love you.
Now, if you were able to, if these people were able to cast votes and nullify all of the votes of you high information voters, right? Wouldn't it actually be better for them and for you to disenfranchise their voting so that you guys could actually vote on political and policy issues that made sense?
Well, I don't think that stupid people are nullifying all of the votes of smart people.
Really? Think
mean,
about what you
all
just
of
said.
them.
Can you
Not
think
all
about
of
think about
them.
what you just? Do you
Not
think there's
all
more
of them.
stupid?
Like, I'm curious how Andrew would feel if you were to bring up to Andrew, like, hey, we should have a misinformation tribunal in the government to decide what's misinformation, and then to ban it, right? I wonder if Andrew would say, I would imagine he would say, well, hold on. How's the government going to decide what's misinformation? Who's going to make that decision? If that's the thing that you're afraid of, how the fuck could you have a government deciding who gets to vote? Would he want the current society to vote on that? Like, I don't know. That's just wild.
Stupid people or smart people?
In this country, yeah, that's probably more.
Okay, so you really
Yeah.
don't think stupid people are nullifying the votes of smart people?
On a certain level, yeah. but
Yeah.
at the same time, they still deserve free will. I can't.
They
rob
still
someone-
have free will.
They don't because they're still subject to the laws of
Voting
the country.
is a privilege. If you go to Australia and you commit a crime, can you go to jail in Australia?
Yeah.
But you can't vote in Australia, right?
Sure.
So do you see how that makes no sense? Like
It
what
does
you're
make
saying
sense,
makes
though.
no
I mean,
sense.
you could travel to another country and endanger people. Like that's a threat.
You're not
to
even
public
endangering
safety.
people. If you're just like drunk in public, you can be arrested.
That is a threat to public safety.
No.
Public intoxication
Look,
is a threat to public
that doesn't
safety.
mean you're going to actually do anything wrong, right?
But you
No,
could.
but that's like saying, oh my God, dude, this is actually so cringe. We'll listen like 15 more minutes of this.
yeah.
I mean, drunken people are habitually
or
more
you could
violent,
break some,
statistically more
or
violent.
you could break some public ordinance, right? You could break some public ordinance you didn't know about, like you're on a beach, right?
Yeah.
And you're in your shorts, and it was supposed to be t-shirts and shorts, something like this.
Yeah, but breaking public ordinances doesn't lead to jail time.
It does if you don't pay the fine.
Well, then you
Oh
should
my
pay the
God.
fine.
See what I mean, though? So you are subject to those laws,
Yes.
and you are subject to imprisonment based on those laws.
You
And if
should
that's the case, you can't vote in those countries.
Okay, but you're not a citizen of that country. You're still a citizen of this country. If you were a citizen
my
of this
whole
country
point,
and you
though.
live here and you are subject to the
Yeah.
laws of this country for your entire life, from birth to death,
Yeah.
you should have
Why do
a stake.
you want dumb people to disenfranchise your well-informed vote? That makes no sense. Not only that, you say that you're actually emboldening them with their free will, right? It's like that's so silly because ultimately these people who are politically low information, they're so low information, you're allowing them to get taken advantage of.
Of course, I don't want dumb people to disenfranchise my vote, but I don't think that the solution to that is a one marriage voting system or you have to do public service for 5 years.
Give me an alternative.
But can't dumb people do that too? Like, couldn't a dumb person just do some fucking community service for 5 years and then
Good
get paid?
counter.
I mean,
True.
like, there are dumb people in the army.
Listen,
Like,
I agree with you that there can be some stupid people who get through the system, but they're not going to be probably low information. You're not going to go through 5 years of civil service like that.
Like, not to be mean, and I'm not demeaning anybody that does this because I think civil service is amazing, but like, do you think that the super ultra intelligent people in society are more likely to do civil service related things or the not quite as intelligent people? Like, I don't even know if you're selecting for the people or if he would be selecting for the people that he's fantasizing about selecting for here.
for the purpose of being able to vote and be low information, or you wouldn't do it. You have an interest. That's what the whole point is.
Well, I mean, if your housing and your food is paid for, I think there are a lot of people who'd be interested in that. The army. I mean, that's like exactly.
The army, you have to take the army. You have to take an ASVAB test, and you have to score X amount of a score in order to even be placed in those things.
Big dog. My boyfriend's a vet. He talks about.
Excuse me, ASVAB is for what, your competency for where you get placed in the army? Does he think that like the ASVAB is like a fucking the MCAT or the LSAT or something like, what are you, dog? Placement within the army, once you're there, doesn't mean you have to be a fucking genius to pass it. What is he talking about?
Some dumb motherfuckers in the army.
Sure, there's dumb people in the army.
But so they would.
But to qualify.
Then what was the point of bringing that up? What?
For certain jobs, you can't be. And for civil service or something like this, you can do intelligence tests.
Okay.
Oh, so you're going to IQ test. Oh, hold on. Now we're getting to more interesting qualifiers. So you have to do civil service for 5 years, and you have to do an intelligence test as well. Okay, what other qualifiers we have going on here, Andrew?
So you're basically saying there should be an IQ test, and only those who would like to be civil servants who pass that IQ test.
Well, I think you should probably implement an IQ test for the military too, which they do.
Yeah, but people say.
I mean, but they do. But they do, unless it's in wartime, and they're like, okay, well, you just need a body in here. And
I don't think there's a formal IQ test for the military, right? Like if you're real dumb and you can't do fuck all or whatever, I don't know if it's like you have to graduate high school or something, then you might not get it. But do they actually do like I don't think they do a formal IQ test.
Then they'll grab anybody off the street. But yeah.
Can we ask about it right now? I want to confirm that.
Of course.
Aiden.
Uh-oh.
Do you do IQ tests for the military?
No.
Do they? Wait, you want boyfriend review?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Wait. Oh, go. It's okay. Just go around that way.
Army, no,
yeah, there are people who are there who are dumb. That's true, but they.
Here, baby, come here first.
If you can, just kind of like.
I've heard of that. It's called a Cat 5 waiver, right? They give them a Cat 5 waiver.
Can you just
chill out? Not chill out.
In terms of like people in the army and IQ tests, like I've taken the ASVAB, it is not a very difficult test, and a lot of people get their ASVABs taken for them. I knew guys in the army who were like medically diagnosable with mental deficiencies, and were still in the army doing jobs that in theory required a certain level of mental faculty.
Sure. Yeah, the system can get gamed, but those are exceptions, not the rule.
Oh, the exception's not the rule, but that didn't matter earlier when it came to talking about children going to criminal prison, big boy prison, but.
I wouldn't really go that far, to be honest with you. And then also in terms of your...
You don't think the majority of people are stupid, or in the army are stupid, do you?
I think there are a great number of people who join the army because they want a place to live and food, which is the system you just described, and that's pretty much independent.
They seem to be joining the army based around patriotism, the ability to get paid, the ability to do things like that. What's that?
When were you in the army?
I was in the army for a very limited amount of time, years and years ago.
How long was that?
So he didn't even do a 4 or 5 year contract? What's the minimum? It sounds like he didn't even do that. He came and went because that was a super evasive answer. And it sounds like this guy's asking for clarification. Why would you even mention that? Why would you mention that you've been in the military if it's, oof, good luck.
The ability to do things like that. What's that?
When were you in the army?
I was in the army for a very limited amount of time, years and years ago.
How long was that very limited amount of time? You know what I mean?
It wasn't very, about a year.
About a year. So what happened?
Well, it doesn't matter what happened.
Oh, but we're talking about service, man.
What about it?
So you want to disenfranchise people based on military service? I actually know why most people.
What are you talking about? How would I disenfranchise them based on military service?
No,
it would be the opposite.
If you're requiring people to serve.
No, it wouldn't require them to serve in the army. Literally didn't say that.
Or civil service. Oh my God, dude. He plays so many sneaky word games. Jesus.
Yeah, I literally didn't say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Adjust this.
So now we've established that people in the army can very much be stupid. So
nobody ever disputed you can have stupid people in the army.
Okay, so again, we're trying to go back. We're trying to figure out how your system would work in terms of those who are participating in some sort of civil service.
Yeah, so you would have some type of civil service, right, which a person would participate in for at least 5 years.
5 years?
Yes, unpaid.
5?
Yes, unpaid.
That's ridiculous.
Why? Do you think that the person who participated in it for 5 years unpaid would really want to be politically informed by the end of that? Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah,
but that's 5 years of not having, that's 5 years of housing is paid for.
Service guarantees citizenship.
So can I ask who's paying for 5 years of millions of people participating in a civil?
Well, chances would be pretty good it wouldn't be millions, or at least not hundreds of millions of people participating in such a system.
So you would like to limit the voting block in this country to less than, there's 430 million people in this country, and you like to limit it to less.
330. She misspoke, though. She doesn't think there's 430.
330 million.
Hundreds of millions?
It's 330 million in the United States, I think. 336 million or something.
Regardless, you would still like to limit it to, I misspoke, my bad, but you would still like to limit it to less than, you would like to limit it to hundreds of thousands of people?
Yeah.
You think it's fair for hundreds of thousands of people to speak on behalf of 360 million people?
Do you think it's fair right now to have 100 senators do that?
Real quick. I only want to target huge stuff with the railguns, right? I don't want to target big stuff. Big stuff I can kill with missile launchers. Huge stuff with the railguns.
No, but we still vote for the senators.
Yeah, I know, but do you really think you're getting...
They don't just walk up and say, hello, sir, I would
do you
like
think
to be a
you're really
senator.
getting political... Wait, you think you're really getting political representation inside of a state like New York with 2 people?
I don't live in New York.
I know, but inside the state of New York, do you really think the state of New York is getting adequate political representation on Capitol Hill with 2 fucking people?
Well, that's why you have the Senate and the House, and the House.
2 people who are your senator. You really think
Every
that
state gets 2 senators.
100 people are representing 330 million people? At the very top, it's one person who's representing 330 million people.
So are you advocating that we shouldn't have government?
No, what I'm saying to you is that like it's very silly for me to look at an argument like you're making and say, oh my God, 100,000 people are going to be in charge, or 200,000 people are going to be in charge. Like ultimately, one person's in charge.
So you're saying
ultimately one person's in charge.
But there's still checks and balances. That one person isn't a king.
There still would be checks and balances with limited voting. There's still checks and balances with limited voting.
Yeah, but we still do not get to decide who is in our legislature. As a voting body, we do not get to decide who.
You would still have people from within your various communities who would be voters, and they would decide who it is that went to represent you on Capitol Hill.
That sounds very expensive and very pointless, if I'm being honest.
How is that expensive? Okay, fine.
Then if
you want to do that, there's another way you could do this too. If you didn't want to do like the civil service way, you could do 1 vote per household. That would limit the voting significantly. Hang on.
Okay.
And it would be not expensive at all. But there's even another way that you can do it on top of that.
All right.
Right? But let's just start with like 1 household voting. Same thing.
Let's do it.
You can eliminate whatever this like perceived cost is that you have. Another thing you could do is just eliminate anybody being able to vote until they reach the same age that they could become president of the United States.
Is that not 35?
Mm-hmm.
So you think that everyone under 35 should lose the right to vote?
Why shouldn't everyone under 35
That
be
was
able
the most boomer shit I've ever
Why
heard.
shouldn't everybody under 35 be able to be the president of the United States?
Well, because they don't have the... But they're still...
Why? Answer the question.
Because they do not yet have the experience in politics to run an entire country.
So,
But just
yeah,
because you can't run
exactly.
okay, Andrew, but just because you can't run an entire country doesn't mean that you should still not have the right to have 1 singular vote. It's 1 vote.
What are you talking about?
Yes, you can't be the president, but you are still susceptible to the laws. You can have a kid at 35. You can have a house at 35.
So, what does that have to do with anything? But you can't be president.
Below
Can't be
35,
president, yeah.
legislatively,
Yeah.
below 35,
Yeah.
from 18 to 34, all of these people are impacted at the same level.
No, they're not all impacted at the same level. In fact, I would say...
Can they all go to jail for committing a crime?
Yes, I would say the
Then yes,
opposite.
they're
I would say like
impacted.
people between the ages of 18 and like 25 are mostly living at home, right? And their parents are the ones who are mostly impacted by legislation, not them. And
That's
their
not a
parents...
fiscal
And their parents should actually probably have more say than them. Their parents actually have more autonomy than they do because they're dependents on them, right? Completely dependent upon them. It's like, if I look at the trends, it seems to me like if you eliminated from 18 to 25 or from 25 to 35, if the founders didn't think you should be president of the United States until you were 35, I don't think they wanted you to vote either. And you know what? That's why it was never law. Voting
Andrew,
rights
this
are
is some
affirmed.
This is some old shit.
That's not an argument. That's not an argument.
Well, I mean, the reason why
Give me the argument.
is because you're young, you're old. Like, you are not applicable to this law.
What does that have to do with anything?
You're trying to govern a group of people that you are not a member of.
So?
That's the issue.
So what?
Everyone should be representative government.
So how old do you think the average person who's in Congress is?
Hell old.
And
we
they're
hate that.
representing
But they're
all of you.
voted
What do
by.
you mean?
But they're
that.
voted by.
So
But they're voted on
you think
by.
that like 19-year-olds are going to be better governing than 60-year-olds?
No, but I don't think an 80-year-old would be a representative government.
Yeah,
I'm glad
but
Mitch McConnell's
80-year-olds are
stepping down.
dying in their depends. They're not governing. What do you mean?
Yes, they are.
No, they're
Sleepy
not.
Joe.
God.
Sleepy Joe, who is in his 80s, now has cancer and he's not president because he went off the deep end.
I know.
Your
And
co-
Trump is in his 70s. And Mitch McConnell is in his 80s.
Listen,
All of these people
your
are hella
presidents,
old.
your presidents and congressmen are running like between the late 40s to 50s to 60s. You don't really think that replacing them with 20-year-olds is a good idea, do you?
I don't think we should replace them with 20-year-olds. But
Why not?
settle for
Why not? Wait, why not?
40.
Why not?
Well, they'd have to be elected first.
Yeah, I know, but even if they were, don't you think that would still probably not be the worst, or that wouldn't be a good idea?
If they were elected through a democratic representative democracy.
Don't you think they would do a worse job, though, than 40, 50, 60-year-olds would?
We don't know who it is. You can just say universally, I think a 20-year-old would be worse if they were elected democratically.
Well, why do you think our founders thought that 35 years old was the minimum?
I think the founders thought 35 should be the minimum because you need experience in government to be the head of the government.
No
which I
experience
agree
in government is even required to become the president of the United States. 0.
with. Sure.
So why this age of 35?
Well, because you have to have lived in this country for long enough to understand it on a basic level.
Because they also thought you just didn't have the requisite experience probably in life to govern at all.
That's fair. To govern the entire country, I would say that
To govern
someone under-
anybody?
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I think
Well,
so.
why? They did. Wait, am I retarded? Are there age requirements on anything besides the president? Hold on. There must be, right? It's got to be at least 18. You couldn't vote like a 2-year-old into Congress, could you? Age requirement, U.S. Senate. To serve the U.S. Senate, an individual must be at least 30 years old. Oh, okay. Age requirement, U.S. House of Representatives. 25. Oh, senators have to be older. Damn. Get fucked. Okay.
So,
Well,
I
why
mean,
can't-
why is it that they didn't let people vote? Why do you think they didn't want people to vote?
I mean, dude, they were kind of fucked up. I mean, do you really want to base all of your beliefs on the founding fathers? They owned slaves. Like,
So?
So?
The whole world owned slaves.
just because a lot of people do something doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, we were some of the first to take people out of slavery, especially the West.
Pretty sure that was England. France did it second.
The West, then? That's the West. England.
That's not America.
That's the West, which is what I said, the
But you know the
West.
difference. You said we were the first.
Why? The West did not remove slaves or whatever. I don't think, I'm struggling a little bit. I seriously doubt at that point there was like a Western world. I'm pretty sure they probably still considered it like the New World at that point. I don't know if anybody thought of themselves as like members of the West. I feel like that conceptualization was, my guess would be the earliest World War I, probably post World War II. The West.
As in America.
The
no?
West is what I said.
I mean,
The
I don't
West.
think we're the same country as England. Sure, we're like
Yeah,
all
but
in
we're
the
part
same
of the
hemisphere.
West, right?
Yeah,
Like
but
England?
We are not run by the same government as England.
Yeah,
We
but
fought a whole war
we're
about
part
it.
of the West, and I said the West is the ones who.
You can't take credit for something another country did, dog.
Well, first of all, many of the people who came here from England, right? The idea of the repudiation of slavery
Oh my
came
God.
from those very same dogmas.
What
So,
time is it, Brian?
so like, I don't know what you're talking
We're
about.
at 4:30.
We're at 4. Okay, dude, you just spent the last hour trying to defend the belief that both sexes should be somehow disenfranchised from voting. This whole one per household, the one marriage system, and I think fundamentally you have not been able to create an appeal.
Why
to
are
how
we
this
getting
would
like
work
closing
practically.
statements here?
Well, because we're supposed to be debating feminism. We never even got to it.
Well, this would be a key component to this, actually. But I'm actually fine with this. If you want to move it on to that, like, but here's the thing:
if
you
you want
never
to
made
do
a
it, we
single
can.
argument.
The argument is that people should be legislatively represented and allowed to vote.
Yeah,
in
that's
a
an
representative
assertion.
democracy.
That's just an assertion, not an argument.
Oh my
That's just like,
God.
I think so.
The argument is if people are impacted by the laws that
Okay.
legislators create, then they should have a say in who those legislators are.
Yeah, but
whether it's a small say,
that's a
okay.
performative contradiction because you said that people who are affected by
Performative
laws,
contradiction.
who A, don't live here, or B, are younger than a certain threshold, should be
performative
It's not a
disenfranchised.
contradiction. It's the point of democracy.
No,
It's that we should be represented by a representative
I need to
government.
understand this logically, that you're performing a
It doesn't make sense
contradiction.
logically because it's a logical fallacy. You were arguing a logical
Yeah,
fallacy.
no, what's the fallacy?
The fallacy is that you're trying to essentially stop stupid people from voting by making.
That's not a fallacy. In order for it to be a fallacy, you've got to demonstrate a logical contradiction between 2 points.
Not a
that less
fallacy.
people
That's
can
not a
vote.
logical fallacy.
Well, you didn't let me finish the sentence.
Okay.
You're trying to stop stupid people from voting by making it so that less people can vote, which is in turn taking away the power of the voter.
What's the fallacy?
Well, you're trying to empower voters by taking away voters'
Yeah, how
power.
is that a
That's
logical fallacy?
You can't empower
That's not
voters
a
by
fa-
taking away their
That's not
power.
a fallacy.
How am I trying to empower voters? What are you
I thought the whole
talking
point is
about?
that you're trying to combat tribalism and that you want smart people's votes to
What does
not
that have
be
to do with
nullified by
empowering
stupid
voters?
I thought that's why you're against NGOs, lobbyists, bribes. You want to
Yeah,
empower the
I
people.
don't know what you're talking
So
like-
you just
He,
don't.
like he has no ability to bridge any concept. She has to like speak back to him verbatim, like he's a fucking robot, like processing language. You just can't possibly understand anything being said that's not repeated back to him verbatim. It's just so stupid. It's so performative. Ugh.
Want the
I don't
country
even know
to
what
be
you're talking
represented.
about. What I'm saying
Ooh,
to
he's
you is
getting
that if you want to
lumpy.
eliminate tribalism, you don't want to have nothing but an unlimited amount of people voting,
Yes.
where NGOs can mark to the stupid people and bend them to their will, and now have that entire bracket for whatever it is their political agendas are.
So again, why not just get rid of NGOs? Why is, oh my God, NGOs are a problem.
Would you
Let's
like
make
to?
sure less people can vote.
Gee, I never thought of that. Why don't we get rid of NGOs, the people who are utilizing tribalism so that they exist? Boy, I wish I had thought of that.
You're utilizing tribalism?
No, they're utilizing tribalism so they exist.
Okay, but you're a political pundit. You have the power to help people. Why not promote a stance that is actually useful to them instead of trying to take away their vote?
Great. A stance that would be actually useful to them would be having their well-informed votes not nullified by non-well-informed voters of what you believe and I believe are more than the well-informed voters. That's exactly something I can do to help everybody.
But you're not helping everyone because stupid people still live here.
So what?
They still have a right to exist in a society.
Who's
where they're
taking
not
away the right
dictated
to
by
exist in a society? Nobody.
Yes, you are, because if they are still held accountable to the same
do,
laws, but now have no right or vote or say in who is enacting those laws and who is representing them in government.
Like 17-year-olds?
Final statement.
They're
from both of you on
children.
this, if you
They don't
can.
pay
Okay, yeah, final
taxes.
statement is like her position's a contradiction. She says everybody should be able to vote inside of a country where they are governed by the laws. The problem is that then she says all sorts of people who fall into the criteria of being supported by laws shouldn't be able to vote. It's literally a performative contradiction. Then she moves to my view and agrees with my view that mostly that stupid people outnumber smart voters. And when you're talking about ill-informed voters, that NGOs often take advantage of them, or I mean always take advantage of them. She literally agrees with all of this, but somehow still thinks it's a better idea to allow this to continue because my free, I don't know. She never really gave an argument for that. I don't really actually know why.
My turn?
Yeah, you can respond.
Okay. I mean, I get that you don't understand why, and I get that you don't understand my argument, and I'm sorry. I hope one day you do. But what I will say is, generally,
get
yes,
mad.
it's annoying that stupid people are allowed to vote, even though they sometimes make poor choices and fight against their own self-interest. Yes, we don't like that. Yes, we don't agree. We do agree that lobbyists and NGOs have way too much power in setting precedents for laws. Those are both things that we mutually agree upon. However, I do not think that it is fair to create a limited democracy that in turn disenfranchises voters on the basis of being stupid. I don't think that there is any way to practically enact that. I don't understand why we
You
would do
could
that.
enact
I
it with a
think that-
constitutional convention. That's how you would do it.
and you don't think that the millions of people who now have lost the right to vote they'd be like, okay.
Well, they wouldn't have a choice.
Based.
I mean, sure. Protests, riots, there's all sorts of ways that people have fought against a government. I mean, would you, like, you're basically trying to call the country's bluff on whether or not they care about having the right to vote, which I think is just stupid. I think personally it's pointless, and I think that the function of a democracy is to make sure that everyone who has to abide by these laws is represented in government. Is that flawed? Yes.
That's not even
But the
true.
way-
Like,
are
that's
you
not-
gonna let me finish? Did I
Let's
interrupt
let her
you?
finish, then we're moving on.
Oh, we're moving on.
We're gonna
Okay.
move on. So finish your thing, then we're gonna
Okay, so anyway, back to my statement. Yes, this government is flawed. Yes, NGOs have too much power. Yes, it's annoying when stupid people do stupid things. But at the same time, the right to vote is a human right under a representative democracy in the United States of America. To take that away from voters is not the answer to creating a more educated voting body. Like, just genuinely, it's just not.
All right, here's what we're going to do. We have a couple chats that are going to come through. Guys, if you want to interact with the stream, the show, the debaters, $200 TTS. And also, if you're enjoying the stream, kindly like the video. If you want to support Venmo, Cash App, whatever pod without these platforms taking their cut, we're also live on twitch.tv/whatever if you want to drop us a follow in the Prime sub. Also, we have some merch, shop.whatever.com.
Who said this? Many forms of government have been tried and will be tried in this world of sin and woe. No one pretends that democracy is perfect or all wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. Churchill, because every quote that we don't know where it comes from always comes from Churchill. Okay. I'll put gun turrets, missile launchers, and then this ship will make it, right? This ship should make it to the edge of the thing. We're done, right? This is the final dude. What'd you name the ship? The Voyager 3. Is this like enough? If I have like 1,000 railgun ammos, I'll just bring 5,000. Fuck it, dude. We ball. We ball. How's this one different from the mod you finished a while back? Significantly more, or this is significantly easier. I wonder if this, like, power system is enough to make it. I bet it is. Why don't you make ammo as you fly? Because fuck all that. I'm gonna send all that shit up. Fuck all that bullshit. Watch out for plasma. It only goes one way, so your reactor is fucked at the moment. Wait, what? It literally has arrows going left and right on both sides. What are you talking about? Oh, wait. This plasma only goes one way. Oh, cringe. I just have to move all of these up one, though, and then pipe it, right? Like this? Should be fine. You can't pipe plasma? What? Okay, so then what? It has to go like this? Like this works? You can pipe the output, right? Okay, yeah. You should be able to. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, whatever. Well, I can figure that out later. Okay, I'll finish this tomorrow. I love y'all so much, okay? Shh. Melon, ball, chance, bow, ball, soul, blubber, function, fluke, utility, toe, avenue, benefit, flipper, railroad, gala, and heel. Utility function. What the fuck? Fluke and chance. Oh, like names for like parties, I think, right? Like a ball, a benefit, a gala, a function, maybe? Fundraising event. God. Big brain. Okay. Chance Avenue. Fuck, Flipper. What the fuck? Toe melon. Blubber. Soul. Okay, fluke and chance must be related, right? How could they not be? No, they're not. Avenue. Heel. Oh, this is cringe. This is like homonyms. I wonder if this is the purple one. This is like homonyms for parts of the foot or whatever. Like your heel, the ball, a toe, and a insole. Oh my god. Okay, utility, blubber, avenue, chance, flipper, railroad, melon, fluke. Okay, this was the hardest one. This should be easy. Blubber, flipper, fluke, chance, avenue, melon, utility, railroad. What the fuck? Oh, wait. Are these Monopoly pieces? Space on Monopoly board. Oh, okay. I don't know what the fuck this is. Blubber? Flip. I have no clue. The fuck is this? Features of a toothed whale? A fluke and a melon? And a blubber? I don't know what like any of these are. Blubber is the fat? I guess. Would you call that feature of a toothed whale? Is the blubber? That seems kind of cringe. 950 to save Biden. Let's go. That's pretty close. That's pretty close, okay? Hold on, I get one more. It was close. It was close enough. I get one more. Hold on. Come on, Biden. Okay, last one for real, for real. For real, for real.
Bruh.
I tried. Listen, he's an old guy, okay? What do you want me to say? What do you want me to say? Cancer's bad, okay?